second regular session of this term of the Town Council. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilor Perry,
Present.
Councilor Hilton,
Present.
Councilor DiMederos,
Present.
Councilor Katz,
Present.
Councilor Coulter,
Present. Good evening.
Councilor Cook, and Councilor Driggs. All present.
Okay, again, good evening and welcome. It is Monday, December 10th. We'll start with the consent agenda. We have 8 items on the consent agenda, ranging from approval of various minutes, receipt of minutes from fellow boards and commissions, some correspondence, some tax assessor abatements, reports from the town administrator, reports from the town planner and the administrative officer, and from the town clerk approval of Bay Street moratorium. Would anybody, oh, there's more. We also have a report from our town treasurer and from Councilor Driggs, distribution of information regarding understanding the mechanics of net meter credits. Would anybody like to pull anything off for discussion?
I don't know if I can do this because I'm new to this, but I was just wondering if we could move D, appointments and resignations, to be first so that they can go home instead of waiting
First we
around.
need it.
If it's whatever you say.
Rob, first I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Let's just, see if there's anything off the consent agenda, and then we'll come right back to that.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. It's a live motion. Any objection to approving the consent agenda as presented?
No.
Second call? Okay. This will be to approve all 10 items as presented on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's 7-0. Okay.
Now, Donna.
Would there be any objection to taking item D, appointments and resignations, out of order?
I'd like to second Donna's motion, because I figured that was a motion.
Is it, do I need to change what I said? I make a motion to move D, or appointments and resignations to be dealt with first.
Second.
Okay, we have a live motion and a second. Is there any objection to moving item D out of order? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor? This is just to move the item out of order. All right, thank you, that's 7-0. Okay, so we are on Part D, appointments and resignations. We have appointments of Mr. Justin W. LaCroix to the Budget Committee for a vacancy and Ms. Deborah A. Palish for the School Committee vacancy. I believe that these are by operation of law, in fact, of the recent charter change, which passed, which places the next highest vote getter automatically. So I think that we should probably take a vote here, but it's very pro forma. And can we do an installation right on the spot, or is that,
I have their oaths. I was going to give their oaths in there, but that's up to you.
I think that,
I don't think Deb's here. Oh, yes, she
I
is.
saw it, yeah, okay. All right, I would suggest we take these together if there's no objection. May I have a motion to approve both Mr. LaCroix to the Budget Committee and Ms. Palish to the School Committee?
So moved.
We have a motion, may I have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
I have a second from Joe. Any objection to proceeding to a vote? No? Scared the town administrator? All those in favor? Objection? Great. Congratulations and thank you for participating in the process.
So do you want?
Does anybody want to get sworn in right on the spot?
Yes.
Let's do it. Wonderful. I'll turn it over to Madam Clerk.
You can do it if you want.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You're gonna
Same
raise-
time, or?
Sure.
All right.
You're going to raise your right hand and then just fill your name in and repeat after me. I
I,
Justin
Deborah
LaCroix.
Palish,
do solemnly swear
Do
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
enforce, and abide
enforce, and abide
by the Constitution and laws
by the Constitution and laws
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and of the state of Rhode Island,
and of the state of Rhode Island,
that I will in all respects
that I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter
observe the provisions of the Charter
and ordinances of the town of Tiverton,
and ordinances of the town of Tiverton,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
as
as school
As
committee
budget
member
committee member
for the town of Tiverton,
for the town of Tiverton.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, you are now.
Wonderful. Congratulations again, and thank you for your service. I think that takes us to the open public forum. We have one item that's on the agenda, which is a presentation by Mr. Robert Lance of Bill Sales, a proposed business in the industrial park. And I believe we also have 2 sign-ins. I have that correct? So why don't we take the item that is on the agenda first? Is there a Mr. Lance available? Great. Robert Lance. Would you be more comfortable sitting, or I don't know how, I guess, okay.
We're pretty easy going, so whatever the council would like is
Take it
fine with
away.
us.
Take it away.
Adam Thayer on behalf of Bob Lance and Bill Sales. Mr. Lance? I represent Bill Sales Firewood and Mr. Lance. I'm kind of getting into this a little bit late in the game here, so we're happy to talk to you about basically anything the council would like to know about the proposed business at the industrial park, or any other concerns or questions you might have. So please fire away when ready.
Rob?
It's an open public forum, so just keep me, are we allowed to even, does this have to be one way?
Yes.
Or are we allowed to?
So,
Because he's on the
On the
agenda.
agenda.
yeah,
it's
he's
different.
on the, just no votes, just informational, you can,
Mr. Lance, the old council, which is the 3 of us, already know a lot about your company. Could you give us a brief synopsis for the rest of the council, please?
So basically, we build storage sheds and outdoor furniture, and we do a large amount of firewood. We process it, and that's pretty much it. I mean, we dry the wood, we're not a land clearer, we just get logs in, and then we process them from there.
Now, we understand you'll have 1 kilt or 2? Because the Portsmouth, where you'll be moving into the
Right
industrial
now, I have
park.
2.
Right now, you have 2.
Right. Down the road, I mean, I'm not looking to downsize by any means. I mean, the reason to move over there is to kind of expand. So like I say, right now I have 2 kilns. I don't know what the future's gonna bring.
Now, what we understood was over in Portsmouth, you had to get a noise ordinance because of the noise over in Portsmouth, and it was above what their ordinance required.
Yeah, so I'm happy to speak to that. So this was all the stuff I submitted to Portsmouth over the course of about 18 months, so I'm not going to beat you over the head with this, but I want to just give you a very brief synopsis of what happened, so that, because when you just read things in the paper, it can be tough to get the full picture of what happened. So Bill Sales has been in existence since the 1970s in Portsmouth, right on the main road there, kind of by the Portsmouth Town Hall. They opened in the 70s. The zoning ordinance first came into effect in Portsmouth in 1980. And at that time, unless your property was designated as either commercial, industrial, open space, it was just residential by default. Now, we have no idea why, but for some reason, the Bill Sales property was never designated into any of the zones. So by default, it became residential. So they became illegal non-conforming. Every time the zoning ordinance was updated after that, they were allowed to remain as a legal non-conforming, okay? What was somewhat law of unintended consequences was in the early 1990s, my grandfather was actually the chief of police in Portsmouth, who is still alive. And what they were having a big problem with was a lot of the bars down in Island Park were staying up open really late and bothering all the neighbors. So as Peter knows, the best thing a lawyer can do is plagiarize from other lawyers. So Portsmouth went and just copied the zoning ordinances from other towns. And the way the zoning ordinance, or the noise ordinance works is they measure by receiving property use. So what ended up happening was that was fine. It's like if you're processing a log and no one's around, it doesn't make a sound. That kind of happened in Portsmouth, where there was nobody next to them, but the neighboring properties were technically zoned residential. So when eventually they built houses next door, now you had this kind of unintended consequence of a commercial business that had existed for 40 years on a state highway now has to comply with the residential limit at a portion of its property boundary. And that was never a problem. Bill Sales got special use permits to build their current facility and everything, and there were never any complaints. A few years ago, one individual who abuts, if you can kind of in your mind's eye see their property from the front, kind of the back to the right, abutted their property, started complaining that they were above the noise limit, which was 65 decibels during the day. It's 75 for the commercial limit. But so just at a portion of their property, they had to comply with 65. Okay? This one individual was complaining. And what this individual would do was he would sit in the backyard and videotape a sound meter and wait for someone to drop a hammer, someone to beep a horn. It didn't matter. And then he would call the police and give them that video. Okay? What Mr. Lance did at his business was spend tens of thousands of dollars to try and mitigate this noise as best he could, trying to be neighborly. He built a huge cement wall, installed a sound mitigation fence, arborvitae, stockade fence, got rid of a lot of equipment, everything like that. What we tried to do was come up with some sort of solution to this. So what we ended up deciding was with the town, what seemed most appropriate to avoid like spot zoning issues was to say that they applied for a variance that said during normal business hours, they could go up to the commercial limit at their property.
Which is what?
Say 75 decibels. So that would be, if there was no residential property next door, it would be 75. And everybody else, all of the other abutters, everyone else in that neighborhood, all came out in favor. There was literally one person who was against this. Okay, and that same one person, other neighbors testified, would call the police on children for bouncing the basketball in the street, called the police on someone plowing the parking lot for the package store across the street. So as much as everyone was entitled to their opinion, we asked the town council to at least look at this one person's opinion through that lens. The town council granted the variance, and what they said was, this is on a one-year temporary basis. You have to come back after a year and show us that you behaved. Now, one of the main things that we did when we were trying to get this variance was we hired a sound engineer and did readings all up and down East and West Main Road in Portsmouth. And what we were able to show was that the ambient noise of those roads is higher than 65 decibels. The ambient noise was closer to 70 and 75. Excuse me. So what we argued was, when this neighbor bought his property, he never had any reasonable expectation of 65 decibels. And presumably he paid a price for this property that reflected the fact that it was surrounded by businesses. So they got the variance in the fall. A few days before Christmas, the neighbor called the police in the early morning hours for a violation. The police came out, did a sound meter reading, and because it was early in the morning, their variance hadn't yet kicked in because it was only during normal business hours, and it registered above 65. So we could have fought that. Rather than doing that, Mr. Lance decided, I'm just going to take the money and spend another $5,000 trying to further mitigate the property. The year after that, we went back to the town council. So this was about a little more than a year ago, to try and get the variance to become, permanent, subject to them if they ever misbehaved or anything, having it go away, but somewhat permanent. And the neighbor brought up the issue that there was this one alleged violation. And we asked Mr. Lance, was anybody at the property? No. Was the business operating? No. Well, then how is it possible that they registered a sound meter reading at the property in excess of the limit? It's almost as if the ambient noise there is louder than the limit. It almost sort of proved our case. Since then, there have been absolutely no issues. The neighbor has sued the town. The case was recently dismissed in the Superior Court, and the Attorney General's office also sided with the town as well. So there were never any complaints before this one individual. There have been no complaints since this one individual. The town sided with Bill Sales and gave them the appropriate variance. And the only one time that something ever came up, it basically proved the case that the ambient noise is in fact the issue, not their business.
Now, our ordinance is 70, am I correct?
It's measured by the receiving zone, and in the industrial zone, it's 70 decibels.
Yeah, okay.
And
So why are you interested in coming to Tiverton and not staying in Portsmouth? Well, for obvious reasons, but.
We need more land. I mean, we're outgrowing the spot we're at.
Yeah.
All the log pile, that I think you have pictures of, we keep those at Louis Escobar's farm. And we don't have enough space on East Main Road to put that. So we're hoping to build a facility over there and be able to store all that all on one site and do everything on one site for the firewood. We're going to keep Portsmouth for retail and the storage building.
And how many acres are you interested in?
6.
6. And it's on this map. I'm sorry, Bob, I just thought
We're always interested in the industrial park. Any other questions or comments?
So this is just storage? Is that
No, we want to process all the wood.
processing wood?
Yeah.
But no retail?
No retail, no. I mean, it's easy on and off the highway. It's I think it would be very convenient.
So how many trucks do you estimate will be going through there a day? And I know that's difficult, but you must have some idea.
Like the log, our tractor trailer, generally we get like 2 loads a day. Not generally more than that. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, there's some days it sits for days. But generally 1 to 2 loads a day.
Do you have something, Trish?
Actually, I do. So first of all, thank you for coming over to talk to us. It sounds like everybody's aware of the noise issue, and you're aware of our sound limit, and you're comfortable going forward. And I don't know, potentially in your new building, which you're building, there may even be more options for sound modification than retrofitting an old building, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, like all the equipment that we have at our shop now would be inside there also. The only thing that would really be outside would be our log loader.
So I have just a couple of questions, in part, and forgive them, it's not that I'm trying to be picky, but I think it's good that we have a good idea of what you're interested in, because we own the industrial park and we own the abutting land, so we have an interest in knowing what's going there. But I also feel strongly that applicants should know everything too, to make sure that they're fully apprised, when they expressed interest. So my understanding, if I'm correct, Peter, is that this property will need a special use permit?
That's correct. The use is a manufacturing use because they're taking raw wood, turning it into kilned wood. It's also storage of flammable materials, which is the kilned wood, and open lot storage uses, which all require a special use permit in the industrial zone. Also, it's the planned development park zone, which has an expedited development plan review process. There's a couple of different stakeholders that provide the expedited review. It's the building official, zoning official, the town planner, town engineer. They take a look at it. If they find that it meets all the zoning requirements, this will then have to go to the zoning board to obtain a special use permit for those uses that require a special use permit. Abutters will be notified within 200 feet. There will also be a newspaper advertisement. Zoning board will hold a public hearing and then make a decision on the proposed uses based on the statutory criteria.
And you might not know the answer to this, but are you expecting to need a dimensional variance as well?
No, we're not. I briefly spoke with, I got this a little bit late in the game here, but when I spoke with Peter, what he kind of outlined to us is the only variances that we are anticipating requesting. And whatever purchase and sales agreement, we would make sure that it's obviously subject to full town approval and everything like that.
Okay, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we don't have the Newton clause here in case that was something that you
No,
needed.
that's fine, thank you.
To follow up on Councilor DiMederos' question about the truck, so, and this is just a general question because the industrial park has one way in and one way out, and obviously you might not be the only new person and maybe there'll be more after that. So you'd get 2 of the big log trucks that maybe come twice a day?
Generally, yes.
Generally. And then the delivery trucks that deliver wood, like how many trucks of those do you think go a day in the busy season? And it might be hard to say,
Yeah, it's
but
hard
if
to
you've
say.
got a
I mean,
ballpark.
I mean, sometimes, they're like little dump trucks.
Yeah.
I mean, they might go in and out 15, 20 times a day.
Okay. And then the last question,
We deliver about 14 cords a day.
Yeah.
I'm the office manager, we generally deliver about 14 cords of wood a day.
okay,
Which means you've got less trucks going out because we have several trucks that carry 2 cords. So you might have 8 trucks going out a day with those 14 cords.
okay. And then the last question, at least as I understand the map, right at the end of the public sewer and water there, so you would not be extending it further down Progress Road, correct? You just tie into the public sewer and the public water where they are?
I believe we could, I think we were able to put in a septic system, a small
Okay.
septic system.
There's no public sewer all the way down to that cul-de-sac. Public sewer is on Industrial Way, and it will go slightly in for the Tiverton storage project.
So then,
The roadway extends all the way. That's the infrastructure.
so the existing sewer line here on, this map is marked existing sewer line.
I think it's taken off of the pre-plan for the subdivision, if I'm not mistaken. Because
okay.
I actually checked with them and said, do you know
Okay,
that there is actually no sewer there? But in this case, this particular business doesn't appear to need the
needed,
sewer.
so you would do a septic system. Okay, thank you, that answers my questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, we have one
I
more.
wanted to know, the kiln, what do you use to fire the kiln? Is it propane, natural, what do you use?
The ones we have in Portsmouth they run on natural gas. So
Okay.
most likely, I've done some research about the gas, because the gas lines run behind that property.
Okay.
And I'm probably gonna have to run them on propane.
So if you did propane, how big a tank do you think you would need?
I really
1,000 gallon, 2,000, any idea?
I'm guessing I think Tom was saying about 1,000 gallons.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we're all set. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Just as a, not necessarily for them, what's the process here? I mean, this was an informational presentation, but
So, this is just kind of provide information to the council. The next step would be, they'll have to, if you agree on a purchase price and a purchase and sale as agreement to sell the land to the buyer, you'll enter into that. There'd be a clause in that would make it contingent upon them receiving the permitting they need. They'd go through the permitting process, and if they successfully get the permits, you close on the land, the town collects the funds, and they open a business.
So it would probably be necessary to put it on the next executive session. Right, Peter? It would be necessary to put it on the next executive session where Jan could come with us with all the details.
Yeah.
Because we can't make a vote tonight, so.
No, not tonight, not tonight. Right. It would have to go on a future agenda.
and is that an action the administrator will take, or is that something?
I just want to mention that, in fact, there was a purchase and sale agreement. There was a question by the council whether there was enough information to look at this. So the agreement is otherwise ready to go, but it can come back the next time, at which time you probably would authorize the town council president to sign it if you're okay with the rest of it.
Okay, we are still in the open forum. We have a sign-up by Ms. Fran Provost on her proposal of August 15th. Mr. Provost, my apologies. Hello. Thank you. Take it away.
August 15th, I was here before the previous committee, and I asked for an ordinance that basically boils down to that we will not help ICE in any way. I never heard from them. They were going to have the chief of police and the solicitor look at my proposal. I never heard from them. You guys are the new guys. I'd like to get, I never asked how long the police were going to take. I never asked how long the solicitor was going to take. I'm asking now. 6 months is way too long to ignore me. And I want this to get back on your agenda. I assume it's buried somewhere, that you haven't seen it, or you can't look at it. No, that's not true. I'm sure you'd look at it. But it disappeared between your being seated and the fellows before you.
And this was to be a sanctuary town, correct? This was to
Ends up
be,
being that way, yes.
that's what the proposal is, to be a sanctuary town.
You can call it that, or you can say...
Well, that's what you called it to begin.
yeah.
That's what you called it last
Oh,
time.
yeah, sure.
And that was referred to the solicitor to look into the federal laws, to see what the federal laws were, and come back at a later date to let us know.
Also, the chief of police was going to look into this situation.
Well, I will certainly consult the minutes from that meeting, and I'll make sure that whatever was committed to you by the prior council will be followed up on. But
Didn't you guys come back with a memo on that? I believe you did.
Not to me.
No, to the council.
I can't remember with 100% certainty. We can get a memo to you. You know, there are a couple of issues that I'll put out there now with this type of ordinance. So the first issue would be that there's no delegating authority from the General Assembly on this issue. So the question is it within the home rule authority that's granted to the municipality? Now, the home rule authority is interpreted to extend to all local matters, matters that implicate statewide concern, you know, that concerns that cross municipalities. You need to have enabling legislation from the General Assembly first. Something like this, you know, there is case law that says, you know, police matters, criminal enforcement matters, tend to be things that go to the General Assembly. That being said, if the council wants a memo on this, we can draft it up and put it on the...
I may have information to what he said, I'm not sure. The state of Rhode Island has done it. Providence has done it. Jamestown has done it. And the Department of Corrections has already done it. So there's at least some leeway there.
Okay, well, and I think even if, we could always take some kind of non-binding resolution of support or disapproval if we thought that was a prudent thing to do, right? Or is
Oh,
that even
yeah, and actually, you know, I think the way to direct that resolution, depending on what type of action you want to see,
to the General Assembly?
to the General Assembly, yes. Okay.
What does that mean?
What I think it is if it's unclear whether this body has the authority to even enact such a regulation, we could always, if it had the support of the council, could make a non-binding support resolution and send it back to the General Assembly, and we could ask our delegates to take that up for action. So that's what I've seen in my experience, you know, just, you know.
Would that be moving this along or varying it?
Well, it's hard to know. If the council acted in a way that didn't have authority to act, then that would not be moving it along, because we would be subject to all kinds of litigation.
Yeah.
So I think, for those, you know, this is a new term of the council. I commit to you, we will review the minutes, and we will follow through with whatever the last set of minutes said. Sounds like we'll probably hear from the chief of police and the solicitor. And, you know, I'm only one vote, but if the legal authority is unclear, then I think we have to, you know, tread cautiously, but I'll see to it that it goes back on the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our general rule here is that if you can find any of the 7-Ups to sponsor an agenda item, it will come on the agenda, subject to time constraints. So I commit to you to follow up with whatever happened on August 15th.
And you'll put it on the agenda?
I'd like to see the memo first.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But if it, all right,
Yeah.
I'm still confused. I would like to see it on the agenda.
Yep, and I've just
You want to
committed
see
to
the
you.
police chief and the solicitor's memos?
Right, we want to be as prepared as possible
Yeah.
for that
Oh, I see.
discussion.
It's okay to come on the agenda again, but you want to get your backup
It
information
is, and
first.
if the video's available, I think we would all do well to watch. Did you present on August 15th as well?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So I'm,
but that was the first time I was tense.
okay.
So will I get to see the chief's memo and the solicitor's memo?
If, once the memo is submitted as your backup to the public meeting, that would become a public record if it's
okay.
discussed in open session.
And I have the feeling that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have to keep excellent track of what's going on here. You don't call me, write me a letter, send me an email saying you're coming up on
Well, I just made a personal commitment to you, so you're
I
going
accept
to
that.
hold me to it, but in general,
I'll accept
that's a
it.
very smart practice, so.
All right, thank you.
I'm not saying I'm going to support your resolution, but I
Nope,
promise
not
that it gets a
asking that,
fair hearing.
but you'll take care of me to come up again.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the reminder. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, just to clarify, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that we heard back from the solicitor following, and at the point, there was a follow-up, that did in fact happen. The council received the information, and the council declined to go forward. So it was not something that disappeared into the woodwork, and we did get an update. The council just declined to take any further
We're
action.
going to review the whole record.
Okay.
I'll make sure you have whatever I have,
Okay.
and
Was I,
maybe the next
Ms.
council
Hilton, was
field.
I interested in anything you had to say? I walked away, I thought we were done.
I guess the question is, it was stated that there was further action taken by the town council, and if you don't mind me asking, were you aware of that?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to take this one on myself. I'll make sure that you and I both have the full record.
Thank you.
I can't guarantee you've got support of this council, but I
That's
can
fair.
guarantee you'll at least see what happened. We'll get a full hearing on it.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Okay. And the last item for the open session is Ms. Kelly Levesque and Ms. Sally Black on Tiverton prevention. Are either or both? Great.
Good evening. We just want to give a couple updates from the Tiverton Prevention Coalition. A reminder that the grandparent support group will meet this Wednesday, the 12th, from 6:30 to 7:30 in the Tiverton Library. They're in the trustees' room this time. Since it was late notice, they had a date change. The group is open to anyone in any community that is raising or helping to raise a grandchild of any age, and all are welcome to attend. And the Prevention Coalition is taking 11 Tiverton High School students down to Washington, D.C. for a CADCA conference in February. CADCA stands for Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. These 11 students will meet with the Rhode Island leadership team on Capitol Hill on one of the days. They are seeking $100 donations from local businesses or residents, and as a thank you, your logo or name will be put on their T-shirts, which they will wear for the conference time. I believe it's a 4-day conference. We have letters with us if anyone would like to support their cause. And again, it's happening February 4th through 7th of 2019 down in Washington, D.C.
And since it's a community event, when they come back, they'll present to the town council so that everybody will know what happened, because this isn't just for the schools, this is for the whole community. And that's important to us whenever we get a grant or anything else. It's not just for the schools. And now Tiverton Prevention is part of Newport County Prevention, because that's how the state wanted it. But we're still doing all the regular meetings every month, and everyone's welcome. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, that takes us to Part B, which is, we're in a public hearing phase here for proposed ordinance amending Chapter 74, having to do with taxations, Divisions 3 through 6, exemptions. Could you introduce this for us, please?
Good evening, David Robert, Tax Assessor. Just a way of background on this, back in 2015, I came to the town council to suggest that we change our personal exemptions from a value-based exemption to a specific tax credit, and that was specifically for the elderly low-income tax exemption program that we had. We also looked at expanding that program at that point in time. The town council supported that. It went to the General Assembly, and we passed, the General Assembly passed the amendment, so now we have a low-income elderly tax credit, which has worked out very well because each and every year, the residents who qualify for that program know exactly what dollar amount they will be getting as a tax credit on their tax bill. If it was a value-based, every year that there's a change of the tax rate, the tax amount that they got deducted from the tax bill would change and fluctuate, so it was a little confusing. So what we're doing now, I went to the town council on January 22nd of this year, asked them to change the rest of our exemptions, the veterans, blind, POW, to a tax credit as well. So it's always a certain dollar amount each and every year. The town council supported that, went to the General Assembly, and that got supported and passed and is effective. So the town now is basically, we're looking to have an ordinance that now we can establish the tax credits, and it also gives us the authority to change that tax credit dollar amount whenever we chose without having to go back to the General Assembly. So this way here, we're a little bit more reactive, and we're not dependent upon the state following through.
Anything? Are we good?
I mean, that pretty much explains it. So just to clarify, when the legislation was amended, if you don't enact an ordinance, there's currently a generally applicable exemption, except for certain towns that do it by way of a credit. Now that the legislation puts you in the credit towns, you need to affirmatively enact an ordinance to allow the credit to be taken. So if you don't pass it, you'll, essentially the certain exempt persons, prisoners of wars, veterans, et cetera, wouldn't be able to get an exemption or a credit in Tiverton unless the ordinance is passed. And as drafted, I put in here just as a fallback the minimum credit. This is what the enabling legislation allows you to do as a minimum. You could always go higher at a later date if you wanted to.
And the minimum's consistent with current practice?
Yes, so that's consistent with what the, essentially, and David can correct me if I'm wrong, it's roughly equivalent to what the exemption is.
Correct. When we introduced to the General Assembly, the amount that we asked for a tax credit was fairly reflective of what the current credit was at that point in time. We did bump it up a little bit because we had taken a look at the exemptions across the state, and the town council at that point in time decided to raise the exemptions just a little bit. And now it's an even number, whereas before it was $169 and some odd cents.
All right, this is a public hearing, so would anybody, the floor is open, would anybody like to speak, be heard, have any questions? And we are in the clear to vote and approve this tonight if we choose, and it'll become effective immediately. Okay. We just need a name and your connection to Tiverton.
Connection to Tiverton. Peter Monis. I live here.
Perfect.
I don't have any objections to the content of the new law here, but I've been looking over several laws in the past, and I see this as an opportunity to try to present a law into the town's records to be very clear to the public. And so when anybody wants to go into these laws, they can understand them clearly on their own, basically, without getting a lawyer. So my question is two things, really, is why did you went into, let me state it back, work myself backwards a little bit here. The laws are laid out in chapters, articles, divisions, and then sections. You added another section, number 6, I believe, into this ordinance. Why couldn't you just change Division 3, which is prisoners of war? That's how it's titled, which is kind of one of the classifications of a veteran, that's for sure. Why didn't you just change Division 3 as veterans, and then go down the line adding A, B, C, D to under that title, instead of adding another division?
So the reason I drafted the way it is that currently you have an ordinance on the books for Division 3 prisoners of war.
Right.
And that's in Chapter 74, Section 72.
Right.
74, 73, and 74, 74 are reserved, but just as a matter of numbering convenience, so I didn't run into the next section, Division 4, which starts at 74, 75, certain exemptions for the land trust. I didn't want to, I wanted to avoid overlapping numbering, so I just tacked it on to the end of Chapter 74, and that way, it would just, every ordinance after that would be sequential. But you could reorganize it. It would just require some renumbering of the...
It's just a numbering problem there, and one less division, which is sort of confusing, because you got one up here and one down there, and people might miss it. So if you just put it like Division 3 and call it Veterans, and then Section 74, 72, then A, B, C, all those components that you want to cover in the exemption, that would be fine. But that's something to think about, and I think it would be a better way to do it. But one of my last concerns is you jump down to Section 7488. And I'm not quite sure. I know you're talking about legally blind persons, but are you talking about veterans only, or anybody in town?
No, that's just for legally blind. And, actually, it's in a division that I did label veterans, so I guess that is a little bit confusing.
It's wrong. You probably should call that one Division 6. So those are my points. I hope you consider them, because I like to see clear-cut laws in the town, because there are some glitches here which we got to get rid of. We don't want to create any more. Thank you.
I do have a question. The everything except the prisoners of war is a new exemption, is that correct?
Well, it's not new to the town. It's just new to the town code, because previously, persons qualifying under those ordinances, the new ordinances, could claim an exemption under the general statute. When the statute was amended, it took Tiverton, so the way the statute is worded is that these persons can claim this exemption except for the following towns where they can allow it by ordinance. Tiverton was added to that, those accepted towns. So where previously you could just claim it from the statute, now you can't, so you need a new ordinance.
Okay, and now that covers all of the different categories of people listed on here, so the visually impaired, the veterans, those are all currently applicable under state law. This is just allowing Tiverton residents to essentially take advantage of that.
Yes, and it does it a slightly different way, whereas state law did it by exemption from the value. This is a credit on your tax bill. So essentially, if you exempt it on the value, like the tax assessor was saying, it's going to come up with a slightly different amount deducted every year based on, what the taxes are for that year. This credit is just simpler to apply. Whatever your tax bill is, take a defined amount off based on the credit.
Okay. And so we didn't add anything to this state statute, any categories of homeowners. Are we authorized to do that?
No, you're not, and the categories are directly from the wording in the statute.
Okay.
We'll have an open floor.
I have just one comment, although I realize this is here. This is one of these pieces of legalese, since it starts with people who would be eligible having served in the basically American Revolution, the Spanish-American War, the insurrection in the Philippines. So I'm relatively sure that there probably aren't any of those left. However, in terms of dates, it stops with the period August 2nd, 1990 to May 1, 1994, and then goes on to say, or in any conflict or undeclared war. Does that cover us up to modern times, including Iraq and Afghanistan? Is that covered under that language, since it's not in the long list of prior?
So the reason I use that language, and I know it's convoluted, but I just wanted to take it directly from the statute, just so there was no confusion that the town's not providing any coverage other than what's provided in the statute.
So this is courtesy of the General Assembly?
Exactly, yes.
Excellent.
And yes, the last phrase kind of makes you wonder why they put all those
Right.
preceding phrases in.
And then
Probably
let-
just amended over time, that
Yeah.
they It started with the Spanish-American War and then added to the Philippines.
No, they actually start with the American Revolution.
Actually, as a point of trivia, as a Civil War buff, and if my father's watching, he'll be proud to, the War of Rebellion is the official government name for the Civil War, turns out. So, but I don't know that we have any Civil War veterans.
No, I don't think
hope
so. But are veterans covered up through Iraq and Afghanistan?
Actually, if I may, yeah, there's another state statute that does add some qualifying dates.
Okay.
That statute doesn't address any of the tax credits or valuation exemptions. It just adds some qualifying dates. So that's a further exemption that this current ordinance did not have to address. But there is a separate state statute that adds some qualifying dates.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Up to current.
Do we have any idea of the cost of this?
This is approximately going to add another $30,000 on the personal exemptions.
On top of baseline.
On top of the base, right. Which,
I suppose is a very technical point. The credit system also suffers from erosion to inflation, right? So much like the valuation. So it's not a perfect model, but it's a better model.
right, right. And I don't have the paper here in front of me, but it was roughly, from what I recall, the base was roughly 1.5 million.
Open public hearing. Anybody else with any questions, comments, concerns? Do you have Mr. Monez's comments are well taken. I hate to slow things down. What would you like to do here? Would you like to hold over the hearing? We could adopt it and then re-amend it. What's your pleasure?
So I think if the council wants to reorganize in any way, you can just let us know in broad strokes, and we can do that. I think, the one point, one thing I would say is, Section 7488 kind of takes a left turn from the topic of the other exemptions. So, maybe you could put Division 7, visually impaired persons, just to clarify that it's a new topic. But you could, you could vote with just the condition that that amendment be made.
Or do we have an agenda problem since it says 3-6? It's really hyper-technical.
No, I don't think that would be an Open Meetings Act violation, just because the substance is the same. It's just a...
Okay. Count on you.
And I would support that. That's a good
Could we
change.
just move all of these exemptions to 7486 as Division 6, or renumber them, and just take out the one that's currently the prisoners of war by itself, Division 3, and make that reserved? Then we have a block in the middle for some other, these are all very similar, even though they're all, individual qualities of the homeowner that would merit an exemption.
You could actually add these two. So currently, under the prisoner of war exemption, there's 74-73 and 74-74 reserved. So I suppose you could do what's currently 7486, put that in 74-73, what's currently on your draft labeled as 74-87, label that as 74-74, and then 74-88, create a new division for that as Division 6, visually impaired person. Then you'd have to rename Division 3 as veterans and prisoners of war, or something like that.
All right.
Well, no, I'm just wondering why we don't just make Division 3 reserved, move prisoners of war and everything into Division 6, so any exemption that is merited by the qualities of the homeowner, we have a special section for that, which is where, if I were trying to figure out what my exemptions were, and I say, well, here's the list of all the qualities that get you an exemption.
Yeah, you could do that too. You could just strike 74-72, make that reserved, and then add the current exemption for prisoners of war and put it as, let's say, 70-88, and then create a new section, a new division for visually impaired persons.
Well, that could be all in Division 6, right? I mean, that would just be, and call
could.
Division 6 homeowner exemptions, or?
You can do that too. Yes, well, the only issue with that is that, you know, there are other exemptions. It says like Division 2 is for persons over the age of 65, so.
Didn't scroll up.
I'd say the simplest thing to do would just be to approve it, or the simplest vote would be approve it as is, but create a new division for 7488 that says Division 7.
Division 7.
Visually impaired persons.
But then all right, so keep Division 6.
Yeah, I mean, you could do, that way, if you're, at least when you're opening up that section of the code, Chapter 74, you'd see
Yeah.
Division 3, prisoners of war, Division 6, a veteran. So if you're either of those, if you qualify as either of those qualifications, you'd look within that section, so at least it calls your attention. And then a Division 7, visually impaired persons, and that way if you,
Okay.
So just real quick, does anybody have any objection to the ordinance on the merits?
No.
Are we sure? Okay. Any objection to closing the public hearing on that? Okay, so we'll close the public hearing, and whoever articulates the motion first wins, okay? What would you like to see here?
I'll try if you want me to. It's up to you. Go ahead. I'd like to make a motion to pass the proposed ordinance amendment, Chapter 74 Taxation, Division 3 through 6 exemptions with the inclusion of a Division 7 instead of at Section 74-88, make that Division 7 visually impaired person.
Second.
That makes sense to everybody?
Yep.
Well, it would still be Section 7488, correct?
Right, but it would just be including
Division 7.
Division 7.
Division 7.
And I just would like the minutes to reflect that there is not currently a Division 7, so we have not disturbed any existing
Right.
divisions, so I think there's no notice problem with that. And for anybody that wants to tighten this up, we can always bring this back.
absolutely.
Right? Okay. We have a live motion and a second. Would anybody like to speak in opposition? Any further discussion at all? Any objection to proceeding to a vote? Hearing none, we have a live motion and a second to approve the ordinance as presented, with the exception of splitting out Section 7488 for visually impaired persons into a new Division 7. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're still here, sitting, but we're now sitting as a Board of Licensing, and we have victualling on the agenda, but I don't see anybody under it, so I think that's an empty item.
Yes, after the agenda was set, someone removed, chose not to be on yet.
Okay. Next up is number 2, approval of entertainment license renewals. This is advertised by Twin River, that is Tiverton LLC, DBA Tiverton Casino Hotel. Does anybody wish to be heard? Second call. Will there be a motion to approve as requested?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the entertainment license of Twin River Tiverton LLC DBA Tiverton Casino
Second.
as advertised.
We have a motion and a second. Any objection to proceeding to a vote? Hearing none. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Mr. Katz.
Next on the agenda is C3, approval of tobacco dealers' licenses, renewals. Forgive me if I mispronounced, Dolgen, Rhode Island LLC, DBA Dollar General, and Twin River Tiverton LLC, DBA Tiverton Casino Hotel. Does anybody like to be heard on this matter? Second call. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve tobacco dealer licenses, renewals for Dolgen, Rhode Island, LLC, DBA Dollar General, And for Twin River, Tiverton LLC, Tiverton Casino Hotel.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would anybody like to speak in opposition? Anybody like to speak in general? All right, all in favor?
Agenda item 4, approval of victualling license. These are renewals. We have 4 of them. Crumbelievable Bakery LLC, it's a wonderful name. Lynn's Kitchen Inc., Mineral Enterprises Inc., doing business as Dunkin' Donuts, and Twin River Tiverton LLC, DBA Tiverton Casino Hotel. This is the victualling license as opposed to the entertainment license for that entity. Would anybody like to be heard on any or all of those 4 licenses? These are renewals, by the way. Okay. May I have a motion to approve as requested?
I make a motion to approve Crumbelievable Bakery, Lynn's Kitchen, Mineral Enterprises, Dunkin' Donuts, Tiverton Casino Boulevard, Twin River, Tiverton LLC, DBA, Tiverton Casino Hotel, 77 Tiverton Casino Boulevard.
Second.
The live motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? 7-0, thank you.
All right, item 5, approval of holiday licenses, renewals. Ruta's Dairy Farm, Dolden, Rhode Island, doing business as Dollar General, Sakonnet River Outfitters, and Twin River Tiverton, doing business as Tiverton Casino Hotel. This public hearing, would anybody like to be heard on this matter? No? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve any or all of these renewals?
I'll make a motion to approve all of the said above, the approval of the holiday licenses for these 4 businesses.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Would anybody like to speak in opposition? Or in favor? Hearing nothing, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? That was 7-0.
Number 6, petroleum storage licenses. We have 2, Executive Smokehouse LLC, and once again, Twin River Tiverton LLC, DBA Tiverton Casino Hotel. If you'd like to be heard on either or both. Okay, the floor is open for a motion to approve as requested.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any objection to proceeding to a vote? Where was the second on it? Denise?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. 7-0.
All right, and our last Board of Licensing item is number 7, Manufactured Home Elderly Community License Renewal, Country View Estates, continued from November 26, 2008, and it comes with a Planning Board recommendation. Would anybody like to be heard on this matter? Okay. No? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve. The
I have-
license for Country View Estates.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Would anybody like to speak in opposition to the renewal? Or in favor of it?
I don't want to speak in opposition to it, but I would like to speak to the council on the issue. If that's possible.
Okay, that's fine.
Fine. Thank you. My name is Joan Quick, and I'm currently the president of the Country View Citizens Association. We are very much aware of the process that goes on with Hometown America and the Country View home sites. We do, however, we don't want to hold the license, but we do want to bring to the attention of the council the issues that are going on there, and hope that the council at some point would take up some kind of oversight on the issuance of applications that come in as far as putting new sites in there. There are 227 homes in there now. We feel that I've lived there myself for 14 years. The amount of impervious material that has gone in there since that development was first built has caused major situations with wet property. We currently have the Department of Business Regulation working with Hometown America to correct some of those situations. But in all earnesty, we would like the council, the building inspector's office, the town planner, engineering, to just be aware that those homes going in there are not always in the best situation for either the town of Tiverton or the people who live at Countryview. By virtue of the fact they call it an over 55 community would lead you to believe that they are catering to the elderly population. I can assure you they are not. The homes there are not, there is nothing that is handicap accessible. The homes have very narrow doorways that you can't get a wheelchair through. The bathrooms have those big Roman bathtubs that you have to climb up a stairway to get into. So there are current dangers with the buildings themselves as far as the elderly population goes. So there are issues. We just hope that the town of Tiverton will take some time for oversight in what's going on there. Thank you.
If the applicant, if anybody representing Countryview Estates wanted to respond, the floor is certainly open, or if anybody else has any comment on this matter. Okay, hearing nothing, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
It's unanimous. Oh.
Opposed?
Okay, thank you. We already took care of item Part D. That takes us to unfinished business. Counselor Driggs, report on options for legal services. Nancy?
Is there backup
Yes,
to this?
So, our discussion was, as I understand it, I reviewed the process that we did in the past of obtaining a town solicitor service, and I'm reporting back. The process basically is to put out a request for proposals and indicate what particular area you're looking for a town solicitor in. And there are generally 4 areas, either general, as a labor lawyer, as a land use lawyer, or a prosecuting attorney. It's my understanding we're currently be looking for a general town solicitor and a land use attorney. It's important to remember that under our charter, the town solicitor does serve at the pleasure of the town council. The process is that once these requests for proposals are advertised, and that may take a little bit of time because you have to sync it with the newspapers, and when their advertising is, I gather it's up to the town council to decide what papers it goes in. Traditionally, it's been in the Providence Journal, the Newport Daily News, the Fall River papers, and also the Lawyers Weekly, and depending when you have to get the advertising in. Generally, a month, you give them about a month for a proposal to come in, so right there's a month time. And then, at that point, Nancy Mello went through, at least sort of listed the proposals that had come in and in what category the firm or person was looking to be the solicitor. I think there were 14 proposals that came back in 2015. And she just creates basically a worksheet, so we know who they were and what positions they were looking for. At that point, then it would be up to the town council to review the proposals, and obviously we have no idea how many we would get. And then you would have to advertise for a public workshop to do the interviews for anyone you decided to come in. In talking to Nancy Mello today, one consideration we thought about is that
given the time of year it is, I think it probably, you could expect this could be up to a 3-month process by the time you do the advertising and people, have the time to submit their proposals. So, given that, I've been doing some thinking. I know that, and I had a couple of thoughts I wanted to present to the town council. In light of the fact that this proposal may take potentially up to 3 months to find a replacement, and frankly, in light of the fact that the past relationship of the new majority of this town council with the current town solicitor, while we were a majority serving as duly elected members of the Charter Review Commission, was, to put it bluntly, frustrating and generally, I could say, characterized by a lack of trust. And in light of the fact that the current town solicitor did tender his resignation directly after the majority of this town council, with whom the difficulties existed, were elected, namely on November 16th. And really, in light of the fact that this town council it starts its new term, I, for one, and I'd be interested in others, I would like to feel that I have confidence and trust in the solicitor as we commence our new term. So I'd like to propose that we discuss immediately pursuing a relationship with a new solicitor while we go through, if possible, while we go through the more formal request for proposal, and maybe even a discussion of potentially a new way to consider the role of the solicitor. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. I will indicate that Section 803 of our charter does state that, for instance, that the town solicitor be present at all town council meetings, and yet our own online description that we give to potential people putting proposals in indicates if the town council excuses the solicitor, they don't have to be there at every town council meeting. So it's just, I'm just opening it up for discussion, and I don't know what people think.
First of all, I think that orientating a temporary one as to everything that's going on, and there's a lot going on with lawsuits and land, and then once we hire somebody, having to have a whole nother orientation period, that would be very timely also. I also don't understand how we could appoint somebody without going through the process, though. We just can't pick someone out of a hat to be the temporary town solicitor. They'd have to be, well, I feel that there would have to be experience with municipal law, and I feel that you would still have to interview for that process. So while you're going through that process, you might as well do it for a permanent one. But I also really feel that it will interrupt if we have 3 different lawyers within 3 months. As it is, things slow down around here because the workload is so great. But if you have to bring someone up to speed and then bring a 3rd person up to speed once we hire somebody permanently, I object to that. I just don't think that that would really be a good idea, and I don't think it would help move things along. And besides the point that we have a new counsel, too. So then we're going to have an inexperienced lawyer, an inexperienced counsel, and I just think it would be best if we just try to speed this up as best as we could and get a permanent one.
My concern with that approach is that we're kind of caught in between 2 things here. If we expedite the process and have a 2 to 3 month process, we end up with a new solicitor right in the heart of budget season when a lot of contentious matters are going on. I think we can address some of the concerns by doing the interim period. Wouldn't just be for the 3-month process, but maybe finishing out the fiscal year or something to that effect. And I imagine it's just basic protocol that the current solicitor would be available to any interim solicitor to answer questions or clarify anything written in a memo or what have you.
But a new person would still have to be up. We are going into January in budget time, and a new person would still have to be brought up to speed, while during the budget process, we would have DeSisto Law here who knows the process, has been through it with us, and we can recruit. I just don't see how this is benefiting the town at all. And
Yeah,
I
I
also
just-
don't know how we're going to choose the interim one and who that would be. I don't know if you guys have any ideas of who that would be, if you already have someone in mind.
Yeah, I'd just be afraid that it might slow down what we already have in the works going now. I think we should keep things moving. If we can get it done in 2 months, fine, but I think we should keep things rolling the way they are.
And by the way, I do trust this law firm. I know that you have all had some problems with it with other committees, but I have great faith in this law firm, and I just want to put that out there. It's not the whole council that doesn't trust this law firm.
I feel the same way, too.
I do not, and a lot of my concerns specifically have to do with our budget process and the way that's been handled, particularly by the current solicitor. That's a huge concern to me, and as it happens, I do have somebody in mind whom I do trust, Giovanni Ciccione of Cameron and Middleman. He's an excellent attorney, and it's a well-known, respected firm. What I'd like to propose is that we have a special meeting before the holidays at some point convenient to all the councilors, and during that time, he'll be available to answer questions, any concerns, and then we can meet and have that interview and vote on whether to accept a new solicitor.
Is that the way can we do it that way? Don't we have to go out for advertisement?
So, selecting an attorney is exempted from the bidding process. So you can obtain an attorney any way that that the council deems appropriate. And I just raise this as a concern just to make you aware that it may be a concern. And obviously, we tendered our resignation, so as soon as you replace us, we're happy to cede it to whoever you've selected it. So that's not an issue. And of course, we'll be professional with whoever gets selected and try to help them get up to speed as quickly as possible. But I just raised this as part of the budget process was mentioned. I know that there are outstanding legal matters concerning the last year's budget process, and that certain certain members of the council were involved in before they came on. It's just something to consider resolving that, just because it could potentially raise an issue with the ethics code. A couple of ways you could resolve that, either by, I'm sorry.
If it's a live issue of recusal, it shouldn't be discussed at all right now.
Well, I'd like to be able to say something, if that's okay, Mr. President. I mean, everybody else.
Go ahead. Anybody that has the issue that you've teed up, we're not going to get lured into some kind of an ethical trap, so we're not going to talk about it, but it's an open floor.
Am I allowed to speak?
Bring it specifically to the issue of.
Am I allowed to speak? I'm just clarifying. So I'd like to say a couple things. First of all, sorry. While there may be some difference of opinion among some counselors as to the performance of the DeSisto law firm, I'm in agreement with Counselor Perry and Counselor Medeiros that they've represented us very well. But I think one of the things that allows me to do that is that I have a different perspective because I've been sitting at this table for 2 years. And when you're here, you learn and you see and you find out a lot about what goes on that people who are not on this side of the table or not in the administrator's office or the lawyer's office of what is actually going on. So unfortunately, the perspective of the general public, or maybe other people, even on boards or commissions, is only that you get to see a very small portion of what the solicitor really does for the town. And first and foremost, above everything else, the solicitor's responsibility is to minimize the risk and the liability for the town. And you will be stupefied, really you will, in about 6 months when you realize how much on a day-to-day basis we need to be pulled back from the brink of doing something dumb that's going to get us into trouble. And that is an enormous part of the solicitor's job and the first priority above everything else. And sometimes people don't understand why their things aren't as big a priority, but that always comes first. And, you know, as far as what Peter just mentioned, and frankly, Mr. Katz bringing up already having somebody in mind, there are 3 sitting councilors here today who are involved in 1 or more lawsuits against the town currently. And I have to ask whether or not it's even, I mean, we're talking about a whole different process, not having a request for proposal, having names thrown out that people are already looking at outside of the normal public vetting process of choosing a solicitor, particularly when at least 3 councilors have 1 or more lawsuits against the town, whether or not that's even something that should be happening this way. I do understand, on the other hand, you know, I think it's very generous of Tony's firm to agree to stay on as long as possible, although they did give us, you know, their notice now almost a month ago. I think that, you know, frankly, there are 4 people, those of us, or however many there are, that are not encumbered, should work to get an RFP out the door as quickly as possible, so that we can go through the process of replacing the solicitor in a way that's fair to them, so that they're not on this open-ended thing, but also protects the town. If, again, to go back to my earlier point, it's not a matter of handing over 5 case files to somebody who's going to be here temporarily, who's going to be able to get up to speed on this. I mean, a lot of these things have long and deep and complicated history, and it's not just the lawsuits where there's a file, here's the lawsuit, here's the file. It's the things that we have been handling with kid gloves for, in some cases, months and years, because there's been something, and if we don't do it perfect, there might not be a lawsuit today, but if we don't do it perfectly, there's going to be one tomorrow. I think it puts the town at tremendous risk, and you know, I do have to question how a council that may have members that are conflicted can be choosing a new solicitor who would be defending the town against their lawsuits. I'm a little buffaloed by that.
And I also think that if the attorney you mentioned, Mr. Katz, is okay, is well qualified, and he should get the job, then he should go through the process and be interviewed with the group of people, of attorneys that have applied, and not just have an easy opening to get into this job.
And, Mr. President, just to respond to just one point you raised, I don't mention the issue to lure anyone into an ethical trap.
I'm not saying you are.
Just to flag a possible ethical trap, and that way you can sidestep them. That's the only reason.
I think,
So-
yeah, I'd like to jump in on this, and, you know, this is not my first time on the town council. I happen to be an attorney, and I'm very familiar with the comments and concerns of the other councilors here. This is not the first time in the history of the world where there's been somebody on the town council that's had to recuse on something. Joe recused, I think, 5 times the other night, so I have no doubt that there will be squeaky clean with Boy Scout compliance each and every time there needs to be a recusal. And I'm not going to get into any kind of situation where there could be the slightest suggestion that those matters are intertwined. And this has plenty of precedent to that. So that's all I want to say about that. And when the time is right, I'm happy to take some agenda time on it if we want, but I think it's kind of beside the point. I think we all have a pretty good understanding of where we are, and we've had the opportunity to professionally and gracefully part ways with the solicitor. And I'd like to compliment Peter in particular, who has continued to attend the meetings, although Mr. DeSisto has not, for the most part. And I think he's doing a fine job of helping with this transition. That said, I do support Mr. Katz's motion if he chooses to make it.
Well, I want to add two things. The Councilor Hilton mentioned pulling the town back from the brink, and that's exactly the reason, one of the reasons we have a problem here, is we had a board of canvassers blocking things from going on an agenda without precedent, various items like that that were over the brink and beyond, over a couple brinks, a series of brinks. That's part of the problem here. And the fact that the resignation, I personally had no intention of immediately moving to get a new solicitor, as happened when the town hired DeSisto's firm. It was pretty quick after that election that there was a motion to do that. But immediately, that went on the agenda with no request for a resignation. So that's a signal to me. And so I think, I don't know that it requires a motion, but I'd like to ask that we settle on a time next week for a special meeting, at which point Mr. Ticcione can come and we can discuss these issues and more, and then come to a decision at that meeting.
So I would suggest that it doesn't require a motion. And in fact, since it's not noticed for a motion, you probably shouldn't take one tonight. I would say scheduling a meeting is not, that's the one topic that you can discuss outside the open meeting, under the Open Meetings Act. So, obviously, if you need to set a meeting in the future or a special meeting, you can do that. Put a topic on that you notice it the way you feel appropriate to reach a result that you want. Certainly, obviously, there's disagreements as far as the law is concerned, and I think anybody that has been following the town last year knows that there's been disagreements about interpretation of the law, but it's not uncommon, and every position we've taken has been in a good faith interpretation of the law, and it comes down different ways, as long as you've been practicing. So obviously I don't, myself and Tony doesn't take any affront to the fact that you've disagreed with us in the past prior.
Yeah, just from my point of view, I definitely, it's my daily existence to be in disagreements about the law. I think there's a larger question about why I think we're moving in the right direction, because there needs to be a very thoughtful process on exactly what is the fair scope of the town solicitor. And so I'm not talking about the things that Councilor Hilton is trying to bring up. I'm talking about just general responsiveness. As I've been on the council here, I've seen on that solar ordinance an excellent piece of legal work, a 6-page memo with cites. I did not see that, that work. And I'm not here to pick on the solicitor's firm. One has to ask, what is the budget? What is the scope? Is it fair that every single one of you calls up Peter at your pleasure and asks him questions, which are usually difficult or you wouldn't have to ask? Does that apply to all 150 members of boards and commissions? I for one would like to see the budget brought down, just the solicitor's budget brought down. So I think tying it to the fiscal year makes a lot of sense to me. So this isn't, my hope is that we can take this time and really have transparency on what that means. So if you are a member of the budget committee, the school committee has their own attorney, the planning board in the zone, they have their own deputy. All these other boards and commissions don't have that. And I think we need to be really thoughtful about how are we going to manage that. Now, it's also not fair to have Peter on call 24/7, right? But I do think there's some fair criticism about, some of the responsiveness, not about the interpretation of law. And so this will be a nice opportunity, I think, to try to think about that. And I'm sure we're not the only town that wrestles with that. And I also know, just from my own work, that whenever you have a flat fee arrangement, there's sometimes a little bit of tension on, how much work, and we just have to be very thoughtful about that.
So, Mr. President, was it my understanding, Peter, that we are free if we choose to schedule a special meeting to deal with this?
Sure, and you could schedule a meeting, even if this wasn't at a meeting, if you came up, if you said, I want to schedule a special meeting, you could do that outside of an open meeting and just schedule a meeting.
And I would like, I mean, I think that I haven't seen or I don't think I've seen the full litigation turnover report yet that I would, but there may be discrete cases that are already in progress that perhaps Peter would consider staying on as special counsel for that case. There's those types of things that we can be thoughtful about, right? And I don't know if it would, I see no reason why, if others of you have a short notice suggestion. Justin has one in mind. Any reason not to have them submit a letter of interest, or, but as I understand it, this is a two-step process. We need to be able to respond to work quickly, and then I think take an appropriate amount of time to really put some thought into this position that's sort of fair and transparent to everybody.
That's what I'm looking for.
So if we don't need a motion, should we pass on the agenda, or would you like to see a motion?
Well, I'd like to schedule a meeting for next week.
I would like to do it after Christmas because I'm on vacation next week. It's a really bad week next week, quite frankly, and I think it's right before Christmas.
Best use of, I
would like to do it
If you don't
after.
mind, the best use is to have everybody give feedback to Nancy, and then, otherwise we're going to spend 10 minutes scheduling a meeting right now. Is that something you'd
Well, I'm fine with spending 10 minutes scheduling a meeting, but
Okay.
I want to know beforehand what dates are going to be a problem. If we don't go next week, we end up with the week after Christmas, or the week of Christmas.
About January 7th.
I can make it.
January 7th is a Monday.
Thursday next week.
First
I can
Monday
do
in
Thursday.
Well, I could do
January?
Wednesday or Thursday the following week.
What's that, Nancy?
I could only do Thursday next week.
Looks like we are now going to attempt to schedule a meeting in real time.
Yeah, I know.
I would like to suggest Monday, December 17th, or Monday, December 24th.
Bob, could we really not make it next week? I have plans, and
I could do Monday.
I would really
Yeah,
prefer
let's-
to be there, and I think it's important all 7 of us are there. The following week, I can make it on the 26th, 27th, 28th. The next week, I'm open, but I would really hope that you would accommodate me. Because I think it's important all 7 of us are there.
I agree with that. So is it, Nancy, is that feasible to schedule a meeting for the 26th, 27th, or 28th?
You want to do the,
Meetings, you can schedule.
you want to do it the 27th? I know she's away, too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
It's
not
just it's a
available.
I can do
really
any of
busy
those.
time of year.
Okay, so how about Wednesday, the 26th?
Yep.
I won't be able to make it the day after Christmas, I already have plans, but we'll tape it and we'll be fine.
And while we're at it, since we're talking about it, should that be the full meeting that we would have had on the 24th?
Is the 27th?
Would the
of that-
27th work? Better?
How about the
27th works.
27th?
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 Yep.
It's just, it's Christmas week, guys, the 2 weeks.
Well, it sounds like everybody but you can do next week, though, right? So we're trying to accommodate you here. So
Side conversations, everything gets lost.
we're just trying to schedule here.
27th?
This is a special meeting, you're planning just for that one.
I say if we're going to all come here, we might as well just have a meeting. Any problem with that? We all have this work to do. Let's do it.
Yeah, but,
Because we would have met on the 24th, right? Which is also fine with me.
No,
well, I'm glad it's fine with you, but.
okay,
We'll
Mr.
dress up
Scrooge.
in Santa suits and, okay.
Let's do 27th
All right,
regular
sounds like
meeting.
27th at 7 o'clock. Is that a working consensus?
Yep.
Then do it.
Wait, we can't, I thought we were trying to get all 7.
We are, and she said she couldn't. We're all away.
Then we should just, all right. Where does that leave us then?
Well, since we don't need to,
How about another week out, January 3rd?
That's fine with
That's a
me.
Thursday.
Now we're a month out.
Not a month out, with 2 weeks
Oh,
out.
you're,
well, we're a month out from now, pretty much.
well, you're, yeah.
It really doesn't matter whether we're there or not, though, Trish, so,
28th?
really.
Well, the 3rd, January 3rd.
I'd rather just do the-
Christmas is,
Okay, let's stick with the 27th.
okay.
Is there any objection to having a full meeting, or if Counselor Hilton, perhaps, if there's something on the agenda that she wants to, that we hold, we would extend her the courtesy of holding that? Is there, or do you guys want to just come in, focus on that issue? There might be more than one nomination. Does anybody care?
I don't
Okay,
care.
if I don't
If we're going to be here, we may as well do a
Why don't
meeting.
you just have it next week, because it doesn't really matter.
You want to go back next week?
I'm going to take a
This will be the last time we schedule these in real time. Okay, all right.
So the 27th?
27th, full meeting.
Okay.
Okay, no motion necessary. It is 8:30, and we will get on to new business. Mr. Administrator, item G1, Information Technology. Over to you.
Thank you. There are actually two parts to this. If you don't mind, we're going to take them separately, and I want to mention that we have, well, both issues affect both the police and the fire departments, and we have the police chief as well as the acting fire chief here. We also have David Vernalia here, who is the IT information technology consultant, who has been helping us dealing with some of these problems and coming up with solutions. So I would invite them to be on standby here, if at all possible. I'm sure you're going to have some questions for them. This sort of came to the fore a little while ago when all of a sudden I learned that the police department hadn't had email for a week or more. And I thought that was a little odd, if not dangerous. So we looked into that a little bit further, and I learned that actually our information technology system has been unreliable and out of order way too often, to the point that I learned that the fire department email was functional about 50% of the time. I had not been aware of that. I am still dumbfounded that this was not raised as a matter to be considered by me or by you. But so it is, and we decided to investigate what was going on. The problems actually accelerated and got worse, where there were intermittent downtimes for both departments. And so I asked David Vernalia, who typically only serves the other departments, the non-police or fire departments with consulting services, to do an investigation, see what was going on, and give us advice. It turned out pretty quickly that the system that we have relies on an outdated structure, on equipment that in some instances is no longer the right equipment or of sufficient quality, and that in addition to that, with the problem of functionality and reliability, we had a situation where the vendor who was serving the police and fire departments basically was the only one who knew how this system worked and what the passwords were and what the credentials were, and had full control, whereas we did not. And I concluded that we actually had an emergency situation on our hands, with it not being clear that our public safety departments had in fact a reliable communications and computer network to do their job. And so I did ask Mr. Vernalia to do whatever he could do to come up with a way to stabilize the situation for the time being, but also advise us as to what needed to be done to get to a different situation long-term, so that we could in fact rely on the equipment that we have and the network that we have and the functionalities that we need, and hopefully also control what threatened to become a sort of out-of-control cost issue. Because if you don't know when something is going to go down, then it happens then you need to scramble, then you all of a sudden need to buy equipment, sometimes at premium prices and what have you, and you never know what's next. So I think we're actually very lucky to have David as our consultant. He was able to do a lot of investigative work, go inside the network, try to figure out what was going on, who was doing what, why certain things were not working, and come up with a solution. We actually, for some period of time before this, had been talking about the need to really start planning for a change in our computer network approach and everything else, since I had the sense that we were pretty much out of date, if not obsolete, in many significant respects. And this situation led us to consider whether we should accelerate a shift, in particular from a system that relies on a lot of locally sited servers to a cloud-based system, which then always raises the question of how safe and secure is that. It turns out it's actually more safe and more secure than the system that we have had so far. It does mean additional cost in terms of software in particular, where these days you don't buy software once and then you use it for 10 years without having to spend something else. It's subscription-based these days, and that means a higher cost per year, but at the same time, you then get automatic updates, automatic upgrades, and what have you. And it's basically the only way to go these days when you have to switch to a new system. And so we started looking at whether it would make sense for these two departments at least make the switch to a cloud-based system using the Microsoft platform and make the shift as soon as possible, cost it out, and that's what we have done. And we basically are ready to pull the trigger, so to speak, and David can explain a little bit further where we currently are, what has been done so far, but what the next step is to actually make the switch, which then immediately gives us a functional and reliable system where email doesn't go down, the emergency communication network doesn't go down, things like that. And it can be done very quickly, within less than a week, essentially. We just would like to be able to move forward. I personally have no doubt that this is the kind of shift that the town needs to make for the rest of the departments as well, but that can be phased, and we can look further into whether new options can come up or whatever. But this seems to be the most cost-effective way to move forward. Both the chief and the acting chief can answer any questions you may have about the types of problems that they have experienced over the last many months, actually, but in particular the last couple of months, and what they may have tried to do to deal with that. Frankly, within the fire department, some employees ultimately thought it was necessary to just take the situation in their own hands and create their own little networks, Google networks, with which they were doing town work, because the town network wasn't operational. And I don't think that's a tenable situation. So my recommendation is that we go forward with this. I said there is a cost involved. There is some equipment cost, and David can talk a little bit more about that. We've looked at what are the costs. Currently, he and his partner are spending an awful lot of time just going through the system and finding the failures and the flaws and fixing those. And right now, we've stabilized it so that at least both departments have email and generally are functional, but it could go off again any moment. I'm going to stop here, see if you have questions, and would ask that you also take advantage of the presence of these three folks here.
I guess I'll just go first. The only concern I had was the letter of intent.
That's actually the second issue. The first issue has nothing to do with the matter on which you would need a letter of intent. I'm talking about section A on the agenda.
So what would you like to see?
I basically would like the authorization to proceed with the switch to a new structure and a platform so that we can improve the reliability and stabilize cost.
And the cost, is this the cost?
I'm not sure where that is.
Or that's still B, okay.
Yeah, we don't have a
You
cost.
don't have the cost, so
Okay.
we already, over the last month or so, have had to spend almost $6,000 to deal with the situation and be able to figure out where things had gone wrong and to some extent, essentially confront the previous vendor and say, what's going on here? We need the following information from you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then to actually bring some of the equipment and systems back to functionality.
Where did that $6,000 come from?
It hasn't come from anywhere yet. We
So we
have,
spent it, but we don't know where it's coming from.
well, there's some appropriation, which is a whole other issue, how, we have been funding information technology by spreading it over the various departments in rather small amounts, and then a certain amount in the town administrator's office, which I think largely is meant to go to software updates or what have you. There is money in that account. We will definitely need more money. The police chief has pointed out that he has an account that is funded by monies coming out of drug enforcement cases. That is not part of the budget, and that has fairly stringent restrictions on how it can be used. It could be used for this purpose.
I was just going to ask that because we've looked into this, and it's very strict on what we can spend. You're sure we can spend it on this?
As long as we're involved with the process, we can use it for public safety, as long as law enforcement's involved, yes.
Because anything over $2,500, the council has to approve anyway.
So you need to approve the contract. I think the question goes to the bidding of the contract.
That was my
If it's declared as a emergency procurement, and the statute for that is 4555-8, then you can award a contract without going through the bidding process.
That was my next question. Shouldn't this have went up to bid?
May I respond to that? We have a contract.
Emergency procurement, so it's.
But it's an emergency.
We have a contract with Everlasting Design, which is David Benalia's firm, whose responsibilities include trying to make sure that our computer systems are operational. So I believe it was, appropriate to ask him to use his expertise to figure out what had gone wrong and how to fix it short-term as well as come up with a longer-term action. And I believe that the expenses that are currently required, that have been required at the very least, were appropriate under that particular contract. I don't think that if we're talking about a longer-term shift of the town-wide system to, say, a cloud-based system, that we're necessarily talking about doing all of that under the existing consulting services contract with Everlasting Design. And I think David himself has said that, we ought to look at where are we going with this, and should we, take a broader look around as to who can provide us with what sort of options. I don't think we had really any options when it came to the police and fire department. They couldn't communicate. It was ridiculous.
So what is the cost that you're seeking now? That's what's
If I am not mistaken, we're looking at about $11,000 worth in equipment and software that needs to be acquired. That includes software for all the users in the two departments.
Top of the six?
It's Office 365.
On top of the six?
Yes.
So it'd be 17.
So $17,000.
Correct. And that does not include labor, although the first 6,000 is largely labor. And David may have an updated estimate, I'm not entirely sure. I tried to make sure that we weren't, make this an any rosier picture than it is. He believes that, we could see another $10,000+ worth of labor needed to change over this system.
So $27,000.
Between 25 and 27, I would say.
To get out on the, to get into the cloud-based system. And then there'd be a leasing agreement, you said, once you're on?
This would include, so when you have a cloud-based system, one of the benefits of that is that you actually have less equipment on site and less, in a way, opportunity for things to go down in terms of equipment failure. And most of that, gravitates to the people who provide the cloud services. So in that sense, the equipment costs, as well as the maintenance of equipment cost, is going down. What goes up is, but I think this is an inevitable situation anyway, that once our software licenses expire, which they do, these days you can't just buy a license anymore. You can only subscribe on an annual basis.
And how much money is available in the grant?
About 20,000.
The cloud-based is subscription service, so it's not a one-time cost, though.
That's correct. The annual costs, I would, I believe the licenses for the two departments are approximately $4,500 on an annual basis.
It's Office 365?
Correct.
Is that security good enough for our work?
Yeah, and on that, we have relationships with the folks who do cybersecurity on the statewide level, including the state police, and know the person who has been in particular working with municipal authorities and systems, and they advise us that Office 365 is by definition, or has been accepted as a very reliable and secure platform to use. And this is also, in the case of these two departments, you get different software packages. This is the public safety package. It's actually more expensive than the other departments would need because of security-related requirements.
Okay, so here, I've got one paragraph that says we've reached crisis proportions. Means immediate intervention. We didn't see this coming?
No, I had not. It's what I tried to say in the beginning, that I'm still dumbfounded that I didn't have a better idea of how shaky our infrastructure was, our electronic infrastructure.
Do we have enough agenda support for, there's no numbers, there's no dollars, it says update?
So I would suggest this to the extent that it's possible, and I'll rely on the administrator to interject if I'm off base in any way. But it sounded like the action was taken on the basis of a emergency basis based on an inability to communicate. And I'm not entirely sure if that hurdle has been overcome at this point, or if there's additional work that needs to be done to do that. But my advice would be, your action should be enough to take care of the immediate emergency issue identified. If there's something beyond that, then it should go through the ordinary bidding process.
Right.
I obviously would, in general, agree with that. I don't think that under the circumstances, we have that luxury. I think that what has been done to make communication and computer network available is not a stable situation. And I would strongly recommend that you ask David Benalia to share with you his observations about that.
Is this a public safety issue?
In my opinion, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have anything in the, I'm looking at the police budget and the fire budget now. Is there anything in this budget that could offset some of this cost because we're not using the other computer system anymore? Because we were paying someone to do that, to whatever, maintain it or whatever they were doing. So, or not maintaining it. But there are different lines in your budget that say computer maintenance, that kind of stuff.
Some of it which actually goes into Part B of the Administrator's Agenda request, which we'll get to in a minute. Those costs are R&D fees, or basically subscription fees under computers. What has happened in the past is the town and the department has received JAG burn money, right? And normally we receive approximately $8,000 to $10,000 a year, which we use that JAG burn money for technological upgrades, which has been maintaining our system for years. The issue with our system, which Mr. Benalia can kind of talk about the technical issues, is we have a server that we maintain in a server room. The server goes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The server is based at police headquarters and services both the police department and the fire department through a remote desktop connection. So they log on their workstation in the 3 respective fire stations, and they come on to our network, which is maintained at our station. Our station also maintains connections with, obviously, the FBI, the state police, the mobile computers in your police officers' police cars. Our plan was, in my plan moving forward, and speaking with the administrator, going into this budget cycle, is, as you can see, other than that software support line item, there really isn't an IT or technical line item for computers. And given the current situation with the White House and the state of Rhode Island, we are not and have not received JAG burn money in approximately 3 years. So we're looking at a loss of almost $30,000 that we would have normally received that we have not received. So our legislative delegation is working with the White House to try and get that money to come back, because we're not alone in that. So that's a big hunk of money that we would normally get that we haven't gotten.
Well, I'm looking at the fire department, account 7530 is software maintenance. There's still almost the entire amount there. So what I'm wondering is that for the present computer system we're working with, and can we use that towards the expense of?
And if I may on that, Mr. President?
Yeah, that's open for.
We are looking at that. I did the same thing. Well, don't we have, at least we know we have some computer-related accounts. What are they for? I think a lot of the software maintenance is for the very specific maintenance that police and fire have for all kinds of equipment that I don't even know how to describe. But it's not for the general computer network or anything like that. And again, I think David can shine a little bit more light, as well as the chief, who actually knows more about computers than I do, where that is. But to the extent there is any way of taking some money out of the existing accounts, we would do that. And, I mean, I was actually thinking about proposing that we take, say, like, at least $1,000 out of each of those 2 software maintenance accounts, but I haven't had the time this morning, actually, to consult with the 2 chiefs and make sure that that doesn't interfere with other things that have been planned.
Should we have the often referenced technical expert give us his opinion?
He's sitting right there, or maybe he should come forward now.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah. I'd like to add to what Jan said, that it wasn't really just as simple as a failure of email and communications via email. That is not the primary modality of communication for the police and fire departments. But rather, with the network infrastructure being in such an unstable state, the functionality of the IMC system, which is used to run dispatch, to communicate with the mobile vehicles, and also to run background checks, license plates, to do the work of the police department, was outside of the police department, almost entirely non-functional in any reliable way. As you had said at one other point, particularly for the fire department, they were having to rely upon their own ingenuity to provide themselves with unfettered internet access so they could do things such as communicate medical data to hospitals, so that they could actually plug into the IMC system when they were out in the field. So this isn't really about whether or not somebody's getting their email regularly. This is about whether or not people can do their job in emergency services. And I felt that when we learned that this was the level of dysfunction that was extant in the network, that it required an immediate response, because otherwise it's possible that there could be a tragedy, something terrible could happen. A machine cannot communicate. Data does not get passed to where it belongs. People can't do their jobs. So I communicated this to Jan, and we did everything in our power to just stabilize and restore basic functionality. But it's kind of like you have patched up a leaky boat, but it's still a leaky boat. And I wish we could have patched it to the point where it's fit to sail, but it's not quite possible considering the situation. So more needs to be done is the basic message. But I just wanted to add that to the issue of severity.
Can I
here.
ask probably a very simple question? What caused it to become leaky?
It's difficult to describe exactly how it got to that place, but the previous IT consulting firm that was responsible for the maintenance of the network built a machine they could no longer maintain. They got in over their head, they were understaffed, and the network was out of their control. I can't speak to what was going on internally in this other company. I have no idea what was happening, but there was a lack of communication internally on this company's part, and there was a lack of communication to the fire chief and the police chief as to what the state of the network was, what might be necessary to help resolve issues, or frankly, how things were running at all and why they were configured that way. So it snowballed, and over time, ultimately, the network reached a point where the other firm was unable to resolve the issues of the failed email server and the lack of communication between the fire and police departments, and they became non-responsive, and they became, frankly, almost combative. So as a result, they ceased to provide any support to the fire and police departments, and they were left without even passwords to access their servers and to even hope to begin the process of resolution. It was unfortunately not a very pleasant situation.
Wow. I just want to know if were we still paying them when this was going on?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
My concern is the lack of communication or a monthly report. Why the town administrator hasn't been, he sounds like he wasn't aware of this. He can't be everywhere. Where in a monthly report from the fire or the police department, why was the fire department trying to rig this up and make it work and the town administrator wasn't told? I'm not understanding that.
He doesn't
I mean,
have
he
to-
should have been told.
he doesn't know
He doesn't
that.
know that.
No, but I know you're just the new acting chief, but that's really not good. I mean, if it wasn't working right, the town administrator should have been reported to him immediately. Even when it sounds like the firm that was taking part in holding this information or whatever they do so that it will work wasn't working, or they were going out of business, or whatever they were doing, I think we were still paying them. They weren't doing the job, I'm assuming, I might be wrong, and it's not functioning, and the information isn't getting to this administrator over here. And then we have a crisis. And I'm really tired of the crisis situation because it's that.
No more tired than we are, ma'am.
Yeah, I understand that. It needs, however, it needs to be resolved so that whether it's the playground, whether it's this, these are all public safety issues. children getting hurt, no one getting any care, the trucks not going out where they're supposed to be. I would like a different system of letting the town administrator know in a monthly report or a daily report, to call him and tell him, we've got problems with the server. He needs to at least know something's happening. What's
May I just speak to that, because I have the feeling that I may not have been told, but then again, I haven't been here all that long. More likely than not, I would think, issues have been pointed out in the past, and ultimately, the resources were not either available or allocated to deal with it, or there was, for some reason, a decision made that, we don't have what it takes to do a comprehensive solution here. And so it's the patching the leaky boat approach that happened. But I don't think, I've been here since March, and since...
I'm asking for a change.
Well, and I think that's...
Change the communications so you know what's going on.
May I offer just a...
Could do some.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yep.
I'm curious if there's a sense of the council. I think a lot of us have seen and experienced in our other work that this is a great opportunity. We have to solve the problem right now in front of us.
Yep.
But then we really need some kind of an after-action report or maybe a lessons learned workshop. And the goal here isn't to point fingers. The goal is simply just to get lessons learned. And
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe that's something we might ask you and your team to just...
That's
and-
the
and-
idea,
and
yeah.
Take that
Yeah.
and then...
That's my
Is that-
goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the lessons learned might be just what Don is suggesting, that maybe there's a different, a capital projects report that comes out quarterly or something, but something that.
Funny you should mention
lets you,
that. We should.
So not to add more to your to-do list, but.
No, but
do you
this
agree
is-
that's a good that'd be a good opportunity to.
I think there's a much larger issue, actually, because I think the vulnerabilities that we've encountered in police and fire may well exist in other parts of the town system as well. So we do need to be more proactive, and we need to communicate about it. In this case, the first time I felt we had a bit of a handle on what had happened was last week when I included in my weekly report, maybe too long a report, but, I think it had to be done. And we really didn't have a clear picture until then of how serious the situation was, what needed to be done to resolve it. But I totally agree. And I believe that certainly these two chiefs, but in general, the department heads are very good, and we meet, at least once a month, if not twice a month, where these sorts of issues should come up. If I'm not mistaken, people sometimes just give up, and like, this has been raised, nothing gets done, we'll just figure out our own little solutions.
Another thing we could do is, just to finish the thought, and I'm sure the consultants can help with this too, is sort of a formal corporate risk management plan. Would probably pick something, and like, corporate risk management plans is about as exciting as it sounds, which is why it's the last thing to get done, but that might be another lesson that we can try to, I'm not saying we can solve every problem, but at least we can identify most of them coming at us. But back to you. I'm sorry.
Could I just like to interject that I feel that, frankly, the reason this emergency is a valuable lesson to the town is because ultimately it is helping us lance a wound. There's been a problem that predates most of the people who are in public safety, if not all of them, and the town administration as well. And that problem has been getting worse over time. And now we see how bad it is, okay? And we have an opportunity to project into the future a more cost-effective, more functional, more secure environment that ultimately the public safety themselves will have administration of and an understanding of how it works and the capacity to care for it and to interact with it on their own without the need for the translator of an IT person. This empowers the public safety folks rather than puts yet another IT firm in the driving seat. And in the if we think forward and look at this as an opportunity for change, an opportunity to truly grow the town without just buying servers and getting all the new gadgets, but actually plan this thing out. We could actually conceivably be moving in the right direction, because I've been with the town doing IT for the town hall, senior center, Department of Public Works for over 12 years. And during that time, we've had no centralized, focused IT growth plan. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for the town to finally start to come together and see how we can manage this in a way that is cost-effective and functional, and that avoids problems like this and enhances communication. Because everything right now is just too insular. There is little budgets. We're not all on the same plane.
So you're talking about a global approach?
Well, a town approach.
Well, global town approach.
Sure.
Rather than all these little kingdoms with their
Sure,
little budgets.
and each of them have their own requirements. Public safety has very stringent requirements that are...
Maybe it needs to be done differently, because this
Mr.
doesn't
President.
sound like it's working.
Sure, but it can work, and it's
Could I make a motion that we give the town administrator permission to proceed with this?
Certainly can make a motion. I have a couple questions, but
Yep.
would you yield, or do you want to make that motion right now?
No, I'll yield, but
So, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do want to put you on the spot. Are you going to be comfortable with the encryption of a cloud-based system for the...
The state of Rhode Island, the state police of Rhode Island, that is, have an arrangement with Microsoft. The arrangement is for a mandatory implementation for public safety to use their public service and public safety and justice package. All of the servers that the data is maintained on are guaranteed to be within the confines of the United States. All the data that is on those servers is encrypted. It's a military-grade 256-bit encryption. It's extraordinarily good. So
Your
it's...
professional opinion, are you okay with that?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Do we have like an incident response protocol for, because it is only a matter of time where we suffer a data breach like every other organization in the country.
Oh, it's conceivable, yeah. We're much more vulnerable right now than we will be if we move into the cloud.
So if we don't have because companies take this pretty seriously, there should be tabletop exercises, there should be a protocol, you should just assume this is going to happen. So maybe as we build out a global, and I think that's, IT plan, it needs to have that. And I think, I completely agree with you that it's actually probably more secure in the cloud, but I think the perception is that it isn't, and so we need to really,
Sure.
And just so that you know, that was always my fear, and even when I was in Warren, we had the same situation, actually, uncannily the same, and we had to deal with that, and my first question was for the state cybersecurity people to advise me, isn't it unsafe to go into the cloud? No, to the contrary, it can be safer, but you do need to work with the right platform and the right packages that have all the provisions in it that we need for public safety.
And then before I kick it back to Joe, I'm just a little jittery about the agenda, which says update on IT and actions taken in the past tense, and I guess I want to hear.
It goes beyond that, by the way.
I think that the
Without the
second,
dollar, you're okay with that?
the second clause, request authorization to proceed.
That's enough?
I think that's enough, especially coupled with the fact that this is based on the emergency nature as
Right.
stated by the
So
administrator.
the minutes should reflect that the town administrator, the police chief, the fire chief, and our IT consultant have all backed up the statement that says reached crisis proportions and necessitating immediate intervention. And I think I also heard on the record that it's a public safety issue. Is there any disagreement with any of that? All right, Joe?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to grant the town administrator to proceed.
Okay.
With his plan.
We have a motion, is there a second?
How much is it going to cost?
Proceed with what?
What's the ask, 27,000?
See with the $27,000
But
that
that
he
had-
needs
Where's it
to.
gonna
I just
come?
a little
Up
confused.
to.
Does that have to do with
Up
this?
to.
Up to $27,000.
With six of that already spent.
Ratifying 6,
Yes.
21 new.
Yeah, but we
Right.
don't know where that 6 came from.
All right, let's just see if we get a second, because I want to let the public speak too.
All right,
Do we
I'll
have a
second-
to the
I'll
motion?
second it,
All right, we
just
have
so
a
we can
live
talk about
motion.
it.
Does anyone be heard? Did you want to speak, Ruth?
Yeah, I actually work in, Ruth Hollenbach, live in Tiverton. I work with software, and it's great that the state police are using this, what you're proposing, but I find this going a little fast. You can easily make a very wrong decision about which software to use. It's been done many times in the corporate world. maybe you could look at what other towns are using. Are other towns using the same as the state police in Rhode Island? Is that a majority, basically? Okay, that will,
It's not a majority, but it's close to half the state.
that makes me feel better. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't happening too quickly. And if you're going to go to a new system of notification, I have some suggestions later on for that, but this is good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, open floor, go ahead.
The only thing I'm concerned of is where is the money coming from?
Well,
So-
I'm thinking if we can come up with 20 grand for teak
I would say-
furniture, we can. Right?
Oh,
Well-
no, that's a grant though, Rob. That's
I think it's understood
Public
that,
safety issue, right?
That's
well,
That's what
the-
that's the way I look at it. It's a public safety issue.
Yeah, I know.
And I think that, it's something we have to be concerned with
She worked really hard.
for the good of the people in the town.
So
If I may.
about 20 is available from this grant, right? So we're looking at 6 already spent and another 1,000 coming from somewhere, which, is that basically the?
let me just say a couple of things. We're not going to be able to spend money we don't have. We should be spending money out of budgeted accounts or accounts that we have where there is funding and not somehow go beyond that thinking we're going to find the money somewhere. We would have to come back to you and say, we can't do it quite
Right.
with the money that we're finding in that particular account at the police department and the existing budget accounts. And there certainly is no intent to just go out in the wild yonder and do whatever we think is necessary.
Well, it's just over 25, you have to get our approval anyway, so, for spend,
Okay.
for tran-
You say so.
So what specifically are we buying here? So it's 4,500 for the first year of this service, right? The Office 365. There's the labor. Are we buying machinery, new?
We have to buy at least 3 servers to replace what we have. We need to get several, what are called the sonic walls or the fire walls. And part of that is because we have several locations that need to be accommodated. We have 3 fire stations and the police station, things like that. So that's included, the smaller hardware as well. I believe that's the main.
Yeah, and we aren't actually buying 3 servers, we're buying 3 server licenses. We already are in possession of the servers. But we have
These server licenses.
server licenses.
It might be too late, but it would have been really helpful for tonight to actually have a list of what hardware we're buying, what software we're buying, what licenses we're getting, what the maintenance cost on those licenses is. It's a little hard. I mean, I spent 25 years in the high-tech world. I'm following the discussion, but, I don't have a list in front of me of exactly what we're buying, what the current commitment is, and what the future commitment is in terms of the licensing price and maintenance going forward. It would be helpful to have that.
Item 2 is $21,600 for restricted paving drainage for road spoils. I mean, can you think of another thing, Mr. Administrator, that's more important than this? I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm looking around and I see the police chief, the fire chief, everybody's telling me this is crisis proportions necessitating immediate intervention. Why are we talking about this anymore?
And I
mean, those-
honestly don't use those words lightly. I have no desire to create a crisis that doesn't exist. I do believe there was a crisis and an emergency situation.
We're not.
I guess it
I'm
would
not
only be a
saying it's
crisis
crisis.
if-
I'm not saying it's not a crisis, I just would have, I think everyone
I agree,
agrees. It
after
would have
action,
been,
yeah.
it would have been so much
Trish is just asking
easier.
for a list.
Right,
agree.
that's,
I totally
I don't
agree.
think that's,
no, it's a list, just so we know what we're buying
yeah,
and
I
what
would
we're
I would
spending.
like one.
I don't think that's
And-
Well, I
saying
would
it's not
definitely
a
be more
crisis.
comfortable holding to the next meeting just for the open meeting too, but if you're telling me you need this now, and I guess you're on record that your legal opinions were okay on waiving the bidding process, so we're I'm not saying we're cutting corners, but we're
What
getting
about,
close to a lot of them here, right?
what about the liability? If something happens to somebody in town between now and the next meeting, what's the liability the town's going to have if we don't act on something now? That's the other thing you got to think about.
I don't think anyone's saying we shouldn't vote for this.
Yeah.
It just should have been a little more specific
totally
on what we're buying, that's all.
And we literally sat down Friday afternoon where we first had a discussion about, okay, what are we talking about in terms of the equipment that at the very least we will need to get, the licenses, the number of licenses, and, those costs. And it was late Friday afternoon that we actually had that information. And my apologies if we didn't convert that into a list for you to review.
And it could be useful just to, since this is put on under the emergency provisions, to take the vote now, and you could have a post-action analysis on the next council agenda or some type of update,
But it's not till the 27th.
or even just a circulation of information, a memo from the administrator or something along those lines, just to get you the information.
So you knew what you needed, right? You know what you needed, but
As of Friday, I mean,
no one listed it?
I rely on David to tell us what we need. He has given us the best projection of what is needed to stabilize the system, replace what we had with a new platform and a new structure so that it can be functional and reliable. There's no guarantee that this is the be-all, end-all forever. So I can't say that, there won't be changes, but I think this is the ballpark estimate that we need to be prepared for, unfortunately.
Would it be possible for the administrator to give us in his weekly report everything that you're asking for, rather than wait 2 or 3 more weeks to do this?
Well, I'm not saying not vote for it, I'm just saying that I would like a list. And I think that's what everybody else is saying too, right, Donna? We'd like a list of what we just bought.
I'm just, I guess, I'm terribly sorry.
David.
David?
David.
I'm not a tech person, so I need a list so I can get my head around what's going on here. I do know there's a big problem. How to fix it, I don't know. So you're talking about a lot of stuff I'm not, it's no big deal to you, but I would have liked a list, like, if you did talk about it the other day, I guess because you're so used to it, maybe you didn't think to put a list down because you're so
Well,
used to it.
on Friday, we actually did assemble a list. I didn't know I needed to arrive with one. That's
I
my
don't have anything
apologies.
to
That's not his fault, that would be my fault.
Yeah. Okay, I just,
I don't think I'm listening to the vote.
a list, what I'm getting, and how many servers, and what's the software, and what's the cost, and,
Do you want me to summarize?
Yeah, I thought I did, but
I mean, I can summarize.
is it somewhere I'm not familiar with?
Well,
Is it in there?
it's in the cloud, so it's
But the-
3 servers on cloud subscriptions.
Sort of. There's the basic functionality of connecting 4 buildings together in a secure manner so that they all can share the same resources. Currently, one of the fire departments is not connected at all. We
How
are
long's that been going on?
about a day now. It's on and off. We have connectivity from the other 2 fire departments that is stable, but only through 2 machines. The police department is functional, but the police department had mobile devices go down the other day, and the police department had email flaky a bit on and off. It's, we're doing our best to hold this thing together, and what I would like to do is to stabilize it in a way that actually allows them to do their work, and the parts that the administrator listed are not irrelevant. 3 servers, 3 firewalls, a few switches, a couple of hard drives. We're not talking about things that you're investing an enormous amount of money, and you already actually own some of these pieces of equipment. We just need licenses for them. And once they are up and running and configured, if it's done well, then it just requires basic maintenance from that point on out.
So this isn't just a Band-Aid?
No, this is a solution. This is not a Band-Aid. Right now, what we've done so
all right.
far is a
We're
Band-Aid
done
so
with
that
the
people can do their
Band-Aids?
job,
All
yeah.
right.
May I
And
ask
it's
a-
going to cost the 21?
That's the estimate as far as, yeah.
I'm sorry, Trish, go ahead.
That's all right. What is the time frame for complete
I was just gonna ask that.
installation and implementation?
The Office 365 product will be available for us to use on Friday. It takes about a week to 10 days for the government to actually issue us the licenses, or not the government, the state government to issue us the licenses.
And what about the necessary hardware?
The hardware, it's actually licensing primarily. We have most of the hardware. We need licenses to use the hardware. So it's not like we're actually buying hardware, we're buying the capacity to actually configure and implement that hardware. Our estimate is it'll take approximately 1 to 2 weeks of time to have everything done. Obviously, there's the holiday in the middle of all this because the timing of this thing is just so wonderful. But that's our estimate for time.
So it's about 2 weeks of labor,
Yeah, for 2 individuals, yeah.
and then the licenses. And
The licenses and some small hardware expenses.
Okay.
Well, IT-wise,
so,
small.
so ballpark me on the hardware. Are we talking $3,000, $5,000, $10,000? Like what's?
The sonic walls each cost approximately $1,200. The 2 switches will be $300 each. The ancillary minor elements like hard drives and whatnot won't amount to more than a few $100s. The licensing is going to be approximately $800 a server, and we have 3 servers that are virtualized that will need licenses so that we can continue using them. And I'm probably forgetting something because I don't have a piece of paper in front of me. I think actually that's it, in the way of actual hardware and licensing costs.
Access points?
Wireless access points, because wireless is non-functional in either the police department, all 3 of the fire departments, but that's about $1,600 to get all 4 buildings connected via wireless.
All right, we have a live motion and a second. I'd like to know if anybody wants to speak in opposition to the motion. Anybody like to speak any further at all? Mr. Perry?
To give the town administrator permission to proceed with his recommendation of the 21,000 plus the 6,000 that's already been acquired for the upgrading.
Expended.
Expended. It's always been expended, yes.
I only had that your motion was allow the solicitor to proceed, I assume with this.
Town administrator. Town administrator, yes.
I'm sorry, with the switch to the new structure and platform to improve da-da-da.
Right.
And
For
now
the
you're
20
adding in dollars.
Well, now that they know the amount, he said 21, the 21,000?
I thought I had 25.
Well, 20, yeah, but the 6, they've already
Spent, but they
spent.
don't.
So
But they
you're
haven't
saying up
found
to
it.
21,000? I mean,
Up to 27. The 21 plus the 6, they've already spent, expended.
May I ask a question? The $6,000, does that have anything to do with what you're going to buy? Will it work with what you're going to buy? I mean,
Yeah,
that's just trying to make something work. Is it
Well,
going
they
to
already
work with
spent.
the new stuff?
Yeah, no, all the work we've done is forward-thinking work. We're not doing work that is just, a waste of money. This is actually trying to move us in the right direction.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Got a live motion and a second. The floor is open. Are there any amendments, rescissions, any further comment? Any comments from the public? Second call. I will proceed to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented? All those in favor, aye. Are there any opposed? Was that unanimous?
Yes.
And I don't think it's in the motion, but the minutes will reflect the emergency comments. And I think you heard the consensus that what a great opportunity to start an after-action lessons learned report. Okay. Should we move on to B?
Thank you. B is a recent development where a little over a week ago, I think we got notice, or I got notice, that the Police Chiefs Association in Rhode Island for some period of time has been looking at the future of the system that has been used. You heard the term IMC. which is actually I believe, a proprietary term for a particular company, which is the system that is used for emergency communications between police and fire departments, as well as the state police and the Attorney General's office, I believe. And apparently there has been concern with, what is going to happen. The contract, I believe, is about to expire with that particular company, and people who have more knowledge than I do have looked into how reliable they think this particular system is going to be in the future, as well as what are the alternatives available. And I believe there has been a 2-year effort, something like that, to analyze that. And the net result is that we received letters through the chiefs that, they're looking for a certain percentage of the cities and towns to sign on so that they can actually get a cost-effective deal, so to speak, from this other company. And I can't speak that well about the details of what is being proposed, but between Chief Jones and David Vinalia, because they both went to the meeting that was hosted by the Police Chiefs Association last week, they can explain better as to what is being proposed. Now, the good news here is that, if I'm not mistaken, this switch, which it would be another switch to a new system with a new vendor, but it could be done at no net cost increase compared to what we're paying now. So essentially, and I don't know exactly what it is that we have been paying, but we would be paying the same thing. Actually, I believe those costs would be frozen for a number of years, which would probably not happen under the existing contract. And it would allow us to become part of a state-of-the-art system that, among other benefits, has that it's not a balkanized system where you have several subsystems that don't always communicate well with one another. Everybody is on the same network. The same data can be exchanged and accessed quickly and reliably, and communications across the law enforcement community, become, again, more reliable. Now, maybe the chief or David can explain to what extent this also affects the fire departments. I'm not sure, and I just realized I hadn't asked that question, but you may want to comment on that as well.
Excuse me. Speaking from the law enforcement or the police chief's side, just by way, so the current system that we have, apart from the discussion that we just had, the system that we're utilizing is a CAD system, or a computer-aided dispatch and a records management system for the police department. That is shared by pretty much every law enforcement agency in the state, and it connects us all together. So we share information. When a police officer stops someone on the side of the road, I can tell if they've been stopped in Coventry, Barrington by state police, as I can in Tiverton. That is the system that we're talking about. The system's been in use for 25 years. Many of the agreements, as you can see in the broken down sheet, and there's some differentiation between the costs. We pay approximately $16,000 for 46 or 43 users. Other agencies pay more for more users, less for more users, and that contract will expire July 1st. So that system and that technology through IMC is what the term is for it, is dead. It's kind of like XP. They're not putting any more technology into it. It just runs. It is not sufficient for our uses given a cloud-based technology. So moving forward, the police chiefs have lobbied. They sent out RFPs, and Tyler Technologies, which is part of your package, was the one that the chiefs have selected. They've been in negotiations with Tyler for several months. They've also been able to tap different resources within the state, to include the Attorney General's office, to get funding to pay for the entire state, to include DOT, federal delegation. So the only thing that would cost us, Tiverton, is that $16,000 that we currently pay, which is what we currently pay and have been paying for a number of years. Yes, ma'am?
It's not a new cost.
That is correct. So, and what they've also suggested to us as part of the deal to sign us on board, because what they're trying to do is get as many police agencies on board so they can go back to Tyler and say that get as close to 100% of the state as they possibly can. With that, they have a commitment from law enforcement in Rhode Island, and they can guarantee those rates that we currently pay for 5 years. So that $16,000 number will not change for 5 years. And the benefit, I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
And the benefits to doing this, and to answer the administrator's question, I know that the fire department is part of the discussion, but I won't speak for the Fire Chiefs Association. But the main interfaces and modules that we use for law enforcement, obviously FBI, state police, attorney general, DOT, it would offer other benefits to the town going forward. Currently, when we buy a laptop setup for the police car, so to speak, it costs us between $5,000 and $6,000 to put that in there, because it has to be specific. This type of technology is not only cloud-based, meaning that, and Dave can speak to this, we have a computer that is just designated to run IMC. We could eliminate that computer altogether, because we would be communicating with a server somewhere else, much like the cloud-based technology that we're looking to invest in for the town. The other thing with that $5,000 laptop, this technology will run on an iPhone or an iPad, which we could, so in the future, I could essentially see hiring a police officer, giving them a badge, a gun, and an iPad for $800, instead of buying a $5,000 setup for the laptop or a workstation inside the police department for $2,000 or $3,000. So there's cost benefits with the technology going forward as well.
If I may, in the interest of full disclosure, there is a potential cost, and it also is related to a condition that we have for executing a letter of intent. And the letter of intent really is meant to get, I believe, as the director or president of the Chiefs Association said, that we commit to a good faith effort to pursue this. Meaning that if certain conditions cannot be met that are really important to us, such as being able to actually connect to the fiber optic network that we're talking about here, all bets are off. We can't, then it doesn't work for us, so therefore we don't have financial obligations whatsoever. There are a couple of conditions that they already had identified. They want to make sure that, they can be met so that communities can be comfortable doing this. There is no binding agreement with that letter of intent to spend a particular amount of money, is my understanding. It's basically saying Tiverton would join with other communities in pursuing this in good faith, trying to make it work for as many communities as possible, taking into consideration that this can actually save the town money as well as produce a much better and reliable system for emergency communications.
I just would be more comfortable if we did not approve there's 4 paragraphs that say it's legally binding, and I'm most uncomfortable with the first and the third. And my question is, can life go on if we just don't approve those paragraphs? The first paragraph is the one you just spoke of, which is committing us in good faith to keep going. And the last one, at least as I skim it here, says that we can't really discuss it until there's a final definitive agreement. There's some exceptions there, public records, but if it's just a letter of intent, can we strike those without any showstoppers here?
Yeah, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the chief can probably speak to it better than I can, that that particular draft agreement is still being discussed.
Yes.
It's not necessarily the final agreement, and I agree that if there's confusion between paragraphs about what is legally binding, the way I read that particular language that is in bold, the provisions of this paragraph shall be legally binding, is really just that paragraph, not the rest of the letter, what it talks about.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just that there's
So-
language in that paragraph I'm not comfortable with.
Mr. President, if this isn't the final, if this isn't the final agreement, I mean, first of all, I'm not comfortable voting on something that's not the final agreement, but I would also suggest sending the final agreement, having our solicitor review it where they also have access to other police departments and the Police Chiefs Association and the Attorney General's office to get even more clarification on this. So, I mean, I'd be interested in hearing more, but I'm not sure that tonight I'd be prepared to go forward with something that's not a final agreement.
I don't believe it's accurate to say that this is an agreement or a contract. It's a letter of intent to pursue a certain initiative,
I know, but
subject to certain conditions, if I may. The contract, and actually when, I believe in some of the materials it's explained, this would envision that there ultimately would be contracts between communities and the vendor, and obviously all of that is going to be subject to solicitor review as well as council approval. This is not a, in that sense, it's not a binding agreement to enter into a contract with anybody to spend money on a new system.
Maybe we're having a,
it is.
maybe we're having a
No, it's
semantic
not.
discussion,
Yeah, it
because
is.
there are
No, it's
4
not.
paragraphs here that keep saying the same thing, which is, the provision of this paragraph shall be legally binding upon the parties. So, first of all, if this is not the final document that they're looking for us to sign, I think we should get the final document first, and then have the solicitor review it, and you know, and consider it then. I mean, in theory, it sounds good, but I'm just not comfortable voting on something that may not be final, A, and B hasn't been vetted by our solicitor.
So, you know, I think, I mean, what I gather from the intent, and the chief can correct me if I'm wrong in this, but it seems like the intent on this is that in order to do a
group purchase.
Group purchase.
Right.
Who's interested, and that way they can get
Right.
an idea of the purchasing power. There are a couple of things that they asked the municipalities to agree to ahead of time, before they seek the procurement. You know, the first paragraph, it's really, the way it's drafted, even though it says this provision of paragraph shall be legally binding. You know, it says, short of the failure of the law enforcement agency to obtain a requisite municipal approval of the proposed transaction. So that's one out of that paragraph, which is if the requisite municipal approval in this town would be approval of the council. So even though it does say you need to engage in good faith, commit in good faith to pursuing the proposed transaction, it doesn't undermine, it doesn't take away the final say from the council. The second paragraph, paying your own respective transaction and expenses, that is something that would be binding. You couldn't seek transactional expenses from any other municipality if you were to authorize this. Third paragraph, that would also, you know, bind the council, basically not to issue a press release on this until, unless, you know, you can give any information required by law, but you'd be bound not to give a press release or public announcement prior to the execution of the final agreement, whatever that is. And then the final one is that this is, if it's not executed within 180 days, the letter of intent is terminated. So that last paragraph is only, you know, sets a time limit on it. So essentially, if you were to approve it, you'd agree to commit to a good faith effort to pursuing the proposed transaction, although you'd still have the out of the council not ultimately agreeing to the proposed transaction. You would agree to pay any of the town's transactional expenses in pursuing the transaction. You'd agree not to have any press releases or public announcements prior to the execution of the final contract, unless the public statement is required by law. There's 180 days.
What's the reason for that one?
Probably because the Chiefs Association wants to get the, you know, wants to do the press release on it. That's what I would imagine.
So I have one other question, although it doesn't say anything about exclusive in here. If there's no fiber optic over here, which is the big gating problem for us participating in this, where there are other places that have fiber optic. We just don't happen to have it. If there's no fiber optic over here, and at the end of the day, you know, the vendor decides, we don't really care, we're not putting fiber optic over there, you know, if we do this, are we potentially putting all our eggs in one basket, and then, you know, eventually, as, you know, 3/4 of the rest of the state or whoever else has fiber optic gets to go in that direction, we don't have any plan at all?
Can I respond to that?
The chief was nodding his head, so can I just hear what he says first, and then I'll...
So before we engage in any contract to cut off the current system that we use, we would make sure that this system was up, functional, running, and we'd work with the vendor to make sure of that. This came up at the chief's meeting as well, because we are, as you know, part of many, I don't say many, but the East Bay for sure does not have fiber optic cable. And that was something that they preferred, that we have, because it just makes it easier, given the transfer of information, obviously. The Chiefs Association is looking at their resources, probably legislatively, and their connections with the current providers to kind of address those issues, and I know the administrator has background in dealing with this in Warren. And in speaking with Dave, we don't think it's a complete deal breaker, given the technology, because this transition, if we move forward with it, would probably be at least a year we're looking at. So before we would just, and I'm sure would be part of any agreement going forward, that we're not going to leave the public safety high and dry, that we don't have a system. The fiber optic could be a deal breaker, but as technology moves, it's definitely over in the next year, and hopefully we can get some response from the internet service providers for fiber, given that this is a public safety issue. We're fairly confident that it could resolve itself, but it's definitely an issue we have to keep on the radar.
Jan?
So in terms of fiber optic, it might be interesting to know that the fiber optic network is extending to the casino. So it is coming into Tiverton, but then the question is, so who extends it from the casino to the police station? Which is actually what I wanted to start out with, saying that there might be that cost unless other solutions develop for that particular challenge, because increasingly there are also not only fiber optic direct connections, but also wireless connections into the fiber optic network. And that is increasingly becoming possible. And with those wonderful cell towers that we have, it actually wouldn't be very difficult to use that. But that's where the technology is in flux. And we're also looking at, you have this organization, Ocean, who has been developing the network for the educational institutions. It's now working with municipalities, very interested in this particular challenge, because nobody thinks it's right that this particular part of East Bay doesn't have the same opportunities that other parts of the state have. So there may well be solutions. It's just not something we can count on today. Therefore, it becomes a key condition of a letter of intent. If somehow we don't manage to get assurances about actual connectivity into this new system, then we're out. And that then in turn means that we don't give up what we have or other options until we have that assurance.
I think that's a good question about this not being the final version. What do we, I mean, I don't want to approve this one either way, but what do you want us to do? Now, is this urgent?
Apparently, according to the Police Chiefs Association, it is somewhat urgent, or at least they were looking for a response within 10 days from several days ago, I believe. The chief can speak to that. I don't know if there have been any, I assume we're not the only ones saying, wait a minute, 10 days is not a whole lot of time.
I think what their intent was, they were meeting with Tyler Technologies sometime this week, before the holidays, and they wanted to be able to give at least an 80% assurance to Tyler Technologies to lock in some rate that they are going to achieve, given this project, to be able to at least give an honest perception of how many agencies in the state are moving forward. What I can do, and I can work with the administrator on this, of course, is communicate back to the Police Chiefs Association and deal with the executive director is former Chief Wardell of Little Compton. He is the spokesperson for the police chiefs and for the project and the point person. before, obviously, we're putting this, and there are definitely some concerns about signing a legal document that could subject us to jeopardy and liability. I can tell them that we are definitely interested on my behalf, that the council definitely needs more information before they engage in any sort of formalized legal agreement, and then report back to the administrator on that.
I'm just one vote, but I'd be comfortable approving this if we struck the first and the third binding provisions and changed 180 days to June 30th. But if a non-vote consensus gets you where you need to be, and I also would certainly respect the desire to see the final contract as well, so. What's your pleasure? Well, I'd just like to see the 180 days get us past the FTR, right? So, why not just go to June 30th?
Chief, is a non-vote consensus enough for you for now?
You know what, I definitely feel more comfortable to make the council and the administrator feel more comfortable before we because this is coming from the Police Chiefs Association, whether they are comfortable and their attorneys are comfortable with any changes to the document that they're providing to us. So, and then I could obviously work with the solicitor to say that, we're recommending these changes and we'd be comfortable, so we can get the lawyers basically involved in the discussion as well.
Is there any objection from the council for the minutes reflecting that there's a consensus of preliminary interest and support?
Nope.
Subject to further review and, okay. All right, I guess
Thank you.
Does that get you where you want to be?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, we're on number 2. Director Rogers requesting authorization to expend $21,600 from the restricted paving drainage account for the processing of road spoils. Sir?
Hi, good evening, Rick Rogers, DPW Director, and as explained in the request to be placed on the agenda, DPW currently has about 3,000 yards of road spoils that we would like to crush and process. This results in about the same yardage in usable road gravel, and DPW is requesting to expend up to $21,600 from the restricted paving drainage account 554 road-6794. This is based on an estimated time frame for this quantity from A.J. Potter Jr. for a phone call of 11/26/18 of 5 to 6 days. That equals at the rate of $4.50 per hour of $21,600. This is in lieu of the previously approved amount of $13,500, which was based on approximately 1,900 cubic yards. And the early estimate was made at the time of request for bids back in June 2018. And there's backup attached stating the A.J. Potter notice to DPW dated 6/22/18 with the hourly rate. The memorandum to the Town Council dated June 22nd, 18, requesting approval of the award to A.J. Potter in an amount not to exceed the $13,500, and the Town Council 6/25/18 minutes showing approval for DPW to continue using A.J. Potter Jr.
I have a question.
Floor is open. Any comments, questions, concerns?
I have a question for the solicitor, if that's okay. So Peter, can we do this? I mean, the road spoils get used in paving, right? I mean, you're using the road spoils as part of the paving process?
The road spoils are taken from the existing and previous road-approved paver, plus other road excavation, pavement excavations that other contractors we allow to dump so we can increase our pile to get usable gravel.
Right, but the gravel, you're using the gravel once this is crushed, right?
Yes.
You're using that as part of the paving and drainage process, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So given that that's a restricted account for asphalt paving and drainage, does this expense, can we, since that's a restricted account, do this with this?
Well, I think if the DPW director is going to be using it for paving.
It'll be okay? Okay.
In paving operations, which include subbase for roads,
parking lots, sidewalks, et cetera. And drainage.
That doesn't cover potholes, does it?
Well, it could.
You could, stick it in there.
It's good. I just wanted to make sure that was clear and on the record. Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve. How am I even putting this? What is the request here? $21,600 from the restricted paving drainage account number 5540-6794.
Second.
2 seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Does anybody like to speak in opposition? Would anybody like to be heard at all? Members of the public? Any objection to proceeding to a vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, Town Administrator, Engineering Consultant Services.
Mr. President, can I move to take number 4 out of order?
We have a motion to take item 4, which is proposed initiative to repair, replace town farm playground, out of order. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. I'll proceed directly to a vote. Hearing no objection, all those in favor? 7-0. Mr. Katz?
I put this on the agenda just because I want to get some sense of process. I think this is something we need to address quickly because, you know, there's no playground at Town Farm and children are growing up even as we speak. And I know people in the community are already taking steps to raise money and so forth and so on. And before any of that starts to get out of hand, I wanted to understand, because it's our property, we'll have to prove anything, what we should, can, and in a normal course of business, be doing to get this rolling quickly and make sure everything's done in a fashion that's suitable for the community and that everybody agrees on, and we don't end up making this an internal battle because different people are taking different actions. So I don't know if that's a subcommittee of a council, if a nonprofit were to rise up, if we could work officially with them. And I had just emailed the solicitor's office just to say, heads up, I'm going to put this on the agenda, so I'll be interested to know what you have to say on the matter.
Certainly, you could have a subcommittee of the council. You could work with a nonprofit. If some entity or group wanted to take on the work without cost, then it wouldn't have to go through the bidding process. If you were going to work with some group that was going to do it for some amount of cost that would exceed the bidding amount, then you'd have to bid that out. You want to check with the trust, the interlocal trust, just to get their, check with them on insurance coverage. They may, depending on what the group you're working with is going to do. Like, let's say they're going to send volunteers to help put together playground equipment. They may want to see some type of assumption of risk form, or they may say, they're covered because they're doing work for the town, but in any event, you'd want to check with the trust on that. You'd want to have some type of town supervision if, playground equipment was going to be installed from the DPW department, just to make sure that nothing's installed incorrectly. You don't want anybody getting hurt from playground equipment falling apart. So really, I think it would come down to DPW oversight of the actual installation, checking with the trust about liability issues, depending on what's going to look like. If it's just going to be, a group comes in and says, we're going to give the town money, and the town could take that money and just purchase playground equipment and have DPW install the playground equipment, that would be something else. If it was going to be a group that came and said, we want to donate playground equipment and we want to help set it up, that would be something else entirely. So DPW oversight, check with the trust, and you could either do a subcommittee to work out further details or just put it on for
Well, we already have a recreation committee, I'm just
That's what I was just,
wondering.
that's what I was just going to say, the Recreation Committee.
Where are
And
they
I-
in this? Maybe they should
Well, I
be
think they
working
have
on
been
this.
in touch with, people have been in touch with them, right, Jan, who are...
Yeah, if
Yeah.
I may, we had discussion with the Recreation Commission. In general, I think there's a larger issue in terms of how we provide for recreational facilities in this town and maintain it, and the secret here is how we preserve, which is an amazing amount of volunteerism, and use that, and at the same time, maybe look at the challenges of, maintaining equipment, replacing it on some regular basis, and how you budget for that, how you plan for that, how you raise funds for that. Again, together with the volunteers and the nonprofits and what have you. I think it's fair to say that the Recreation Commission is very interested in this. I've heard rumors about internal battles sometimes, but I don't think it's necessary for something like this. It should be something that if people are willing to raise funds, God bless them. All we need to do is just facilitate, some decent discussion, which I think should very much involve the Recreation Commission and maybe be led by the Recreation Commission, together with the coordinator that we have for recreation, as well as we're lucky to have a DPW director who has been quite engaged lately with some of these issues, who could be very helpful with that as well.
Well, is anyone having anything else? I just want to have a few things I was thinking about. First of all, is there a policy on how often these are supposed to be checked? Who checks them? Who's in charge? It looks like no one was checking them. I don't...
To some extent, I was wondering the same thing, because I'm not sure if it's really spelled out as to who is responsible for doing regular inspections or, maintenance even. It just happens somehow, and we just make it up as we go along.
Well-
And again, a lot of people have been, I think, very dedicated in doing things on a volunteer basis, but it's not necessarily the way to keep doing it. And so one of the things that I think we will do in the budget process is at least look at, what kind of budget there needs to be, so that both in terms of person power to do inspections, maintenance, making sure that things, are safe, and in terms of equipment from time to time, replacing it or whatever, and in terms of planning and fundraising, how can we do that with the existing resources that we have, and perhaps some supplementation, I don't know for sure. But I think there is a larger discussion that needs to happen on that, and I don't think it has to be a terribly, expensive thing if we are really focused on leveraging, to the extent the town pays into it, it can leverage those funds. We deal a lot with matching grants, and having some matching grants in the budget will do it.
Yeah.
And then, we can really go after the grants.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to write, with this whole thing, playground equipment policy that's to be checked, something like before May 30th, make sure everything's safe before kids stop playing on it. And who's going to check it, who's in charge of it, and there are so many grants out there. In fact, there was one company today I was looking at, and they're having a half-price sale on everything. Yeah, because no one's buying it right now. So instead of $50,000, you're paying $25,000 for the equipment. This is the time to buy, but...
Okay, so what would you like to see happen here?
Well, I just want to know how to get this going. So we've got people willing to raise money. Presumably, if we found a grant writer, grants proliferate for this kind of thing. That would be important. We need to decide what to do and how. In my perfect world, this spring we'll have a community event where we get together and put it together as a community, because those sort of things have been done in the past when we didn't have all the plastic and wood, metal stuff they have now. But that process needs to be gone through pretty quickly. So what would be the steps to, if the Recreation Committee wants to take the lead, that's fine by me, but I want to make sure it starts happening now.
May I say something? I mean, I think the Recreation Committee is there. One thing that I do think that you need to think about and have one consistent plan for is how you do the fundraising. Because there is the risk when you have different groups or different people doing fundraising with the quote-unquote endorsement of the town, that you run into problems where not everybody handles the money the same way. Some people have the money commingled in accounts, and people are making donations thinking that this is where it's going. Not everybody gets the benefit of a tax, a tax deduction for doing this if you don't do it the right way. And there is also the risk that there's a risk here of, for lack of a better description, shenanigans, where, somebody who wants something from the town sees a way to write a check and, in their mind, thinking they're influencing things. So I've said this before about other entities, that either you should run all the fundraising directly through the town, through the treasurer's office, and where, the town is aware, and if there are certain people that shouldn't be making donations, they're refused, and we say, we're sorry, we can't accept a donation from you right now. And people are getting notes to qualify for their, for their income taxes, or you have third-party charities or organizations do it, but it is at absolute arm's length, so that if something goes wrong with one of those fundraising efforts, we're not liable. As well-intentioned as people are, sometimes that happens. So, if the town is going to pursue grant money, or if the town's going to let people try and raise money, we should decide it either goes all through us, or it's at total, complete arm's length, and we're removed from liability if anything goes wrong on the fundraising part of it.
So how about we ask Justin and anybody else who wants to join him to come back to us with, like we just did with Nancy, and come back with a recommendation? Or
Well,
would you like to?
Well, if the consensus of the council might be, if I just sat down, starting with Jan, and sort of designed the process, just to understand all the pieces we need to put together, and come back maybe by the 27th, if I can do it if we can do it that quickly this time of year, it'd be tough. But I mean, just to start working on that.
Could you include the recreation department head?
Yeah.
The three of you maybe would probably be a good idea, because they've already been in contact with people.
And it is their.
Recreation and the organization that is raising money, they've already met and discussed what their plan of attack is, so they are working on it.
Okay.
Who is that?
I can't
Who
think
is-
of her name. Is it Dana?
No,
No.
no, it's, I think it's Julie?
I need that information as well, because I've been trying to.
She's the
But we don't need that
PTO
right now. We
president
can just-
of the middle school, and she's working with recreation.
If you could get me the contact information, we can make
Well,
sure
I
that.
think Jonathan knows what. who-
Yeah,
Right.
Jonathan,
Yeah, why don't we-
Jonathan should probably be part
Why
of
don't
it.
you, me, and
Yeah.
Jonathan meet
Yeah.
within the next couple of weeks, if we can
That's
make it
probably a
work?
good idea.
Good.
Okay.
And I think Trish's idea is a good one, that any money that does come in, if we're really involved in this, all goes through the treasurer.
Sense to me. All right, we are past 10 o'clock. We have 3 agenda items left.
Let's do it.
I don't always want to stay this late, but I know we're trying to catch up, so is that, you want to hang in there, everybody?
Yep.
Okay, should we go back to 3? Is that okay? Okay, Jan will be as fast as he can be on this.
I'll try. We have a contract currently with Steer Engineering for consulting engineer services. The contract expires at the end of this week. Steer Engineering jumps in when the town engineer or DPW director doesn't have time to do things, and/or when either the planning board or someone else or a large project requires extra time. A lot of the time, the cost is actually carried by proponents of development, so that is a big part of it. Anyway, that contract expires, and I believe it's important that we make it a habit to go out to bid on a regular basis. This is a 3-year contract. We can go out with a new request for qualifications and proposals. We can use the last one that was used because it's quite good. And my first request is that you authorize us to advertise that request for qualifications and proposals, which we included in the packet.
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve to advertise requests for proposals for professional engineering and related services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does anybody wish to speak in opposition? Any further comments? Any objection to proceeding to a vote? Hearing none. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Item B.
Item B is an extension of the existing agreement pending us finding either a new or, a more longer-term extension of the Steer Engineering contract. Steer Engineering provided a draft of the agreement they would be looking for, which I believe is pretty much the same as what we currently have, possibly with the exception of a fee schedule. And I'm actually not entirely sure whether I'm in entire agreement yet with the fee schedule. That can be further negotiated, I believe. I wanted to make sure that we don't have big increases in there over the current rates, and I think the meeting attendance rate might be better done on an hourly basis instead of, by definition, $500 per meeting. But otherwise, I strongly recommend that you authorize us to finalize an agreement with them, either to come back at the next meeting before you, or to authorize the town council president to execute that. This would be through, I believe I said in March. It can be shorter if we manage to select a new engineer or the same engineer again and execute or have a more permanent agreement. But that's basically what, and one of the reasons I really think this is important is that there are some ongoing projects, and in particular, the roundabout project, which was constructed in connection with the casino, that hasn't been completed yet. It's very, very important that we have Steer Engineering working with us to put together the reimbursement package that we need to get to DOT so that we don't end up paying what the state was going to provide, or I don't still know if it's state or federal money, but it comes through the DOT. We need to make sure we get that money. And Steer Engineering has been very, very involved, but they're still working on the punch list, so they're not even quite done yet with the project. So it's important, I think, that they stay on board to do that project and similar large projects that we currently have ongoing, as well as what the planning board currently needs with some of the applications that come before it.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we approve a 3-month extension of the existing contract of Steer Engineering Consultant Services.
Second.
We have a live motion and a second. Does anybody wish to speak in opposition?
Well, I'm not in opposition, but I'm worried about voting for something that I don't know what the billing rates are. Because if these aren't the same as what they were before?
Well, I actually, to be honest with you, haven't yet looked at what the current fees. I believe the fees are the same. I just want to make sure that they are not increasing. But certainly, Steer Engineering mentioned that it needed to update the fees. Now, whether they meant to do it in this extension or in a new contract that they will propose, because they'll be bidding on the same contract. I don't know yet, so I need to figure that out.
So could we make, if Joe's willing to, could we make a motion tonight that we'd approve this at the current existing fee schedule, and then if that's not suitable to them, it can come back. I know we need an in-house engineer, and their contract expires, so we have to do something, but
If I might, I think that's fine. I would like to include, because I know they currently don't even get paid for attending meetings, which is a little,
500 now?
well, if that's the case, then they can come back to it, but 'cause right now it's.
but they could just get the hourly fee for meeting attendance, which is pretty standard, I believe.
Are you sure that they don't get?
Yeah.
What was that?
I think it's the camera or something. Are you sure that they don't get paid to go to meetings? I thought they did, no?
That's what Steve
what they
Baker told
said?
me.
Wow.
Yeah, they haven't been able to bill for that.
Wow.
And there's
Yeah.
a significant
I
amount of
always
time.
thought they did.
They'll make up for it now.
If that's not the case, then we're not going to have an issue, you know, I mean, it's just, I want to be able to accommodate that if at all possible, but at the current,
But what are they gonna get for an hourly rate?
I believe it's the engineer at $120.
Right, but if a planning board meeting goes, well, it's $500.
Well, you can cap it at 500, but I'm not sure that they should, in all cases, get 500, even if the meeting is like an hour, where they only have to be there for an hour.
Adjourn the meeting and continue it the whole year long.
I think until we get this resolved, is to vote tonight to approve and come back to the council with what the plan is for the meeting exactly. So
Okay.
it doesn't turn into $500 or $800.
So amend the motion, amend my motion to say that.
I think you just,
You can just change the
Restate it.
motion.
Restate
Yeah,
it.
instead of
So-
amended.
So we're going to make the motion to approve the 3-month extension of the existing contract for engineering consultant services to Steer Engineering at the current rate. Correct?
no higher than.
No higher than
I'm sure they'll
500,
negotiate.
is that what it was?
No, it's
Oh.
zero at meetings, so.
Okay. At the current rate.
Current, and then you'll come back to us with an actual proposal for the meetings.
Maybe.
Maybe they won't charge us.
Don, are you
They're not-
comfortable with that restatement?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Don?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
seconded it.
I have a D written down. I guess that doesn't really,
There's two
that narrows it down a little bit.
Yeah, I'm
My
comfortable.
apologies. Denise, you okay with that?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
All right. Do we all agree, I mean, that's what the goal, right, is to not, to see the contracts earlier than when they're about to expire, right? The goal, we'll get these earlier.
Okay.
Yes, do we agree on that?
I'm sorry?
We had another contract on for the, I took off the agenda that was expired. We're getting a lot of these that are expired last minute. This is just a 3-month extension. And if I'm reading it right, either party can walk away in 20 days for any reason. It's not really much of a, I mean.
No, it should be done earlier.
And that's something we might want to look at. I mean, if it's a contract that you can walk away in 20 days, is that good for us? Something to think about, maybe.
No, it
It's
depends
just
a little
3-month
bit on the
extension, so-
relationship you have with the contractor as well, but obviously, we ought to try to spot this earlier, and it's all going into the tickler system by now, so.
Perfect. Okay. Any objection to go to a vote? Hearing none. So this is the restated motion to approve as presented, but no higher than the current rates. All those in favor? Okay. 7-0. Thank you. Counselor Hilton, Grinnell's Beach.
Jeez, tell me where that tick is coming from.
This is request authorization to purchase the site furnishing, basically the benches for the shade cell pavilion. The funding for this comes out of the DEM grant money, so this is not out of town funding. But because the amount is above the required bid, and because we're asking permission to do this as a sole source provider, it needs council approval.
Okay. Floor is open. Is that a motion?
Yes,
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay. We have a live motion and a second. Would anybody wish to speak in opposition?
No, well, I don't know if it's an opposition, I have questions about it. The first is just sort of bringing me up to speed. Who picks what benches Who said?
The committee, the Grinnell's Beach Committee.
Which was
Although-
appointed by the council.
Although the committee had a lot of design work that was done ahead of time and a lot of public input, so it was not done. Ultimately, the committee had to choose, but there was a lot of public input into what people wanted.
How much care does this require? Do we have to like oil it down and all that stuff?
No, the reason that we've chosen the teak and from this manufacturer is that this is, grade A, 10% kiln-dried teak that's built for public and municipal and park installations. This is, really very good quality commercial product, and it will be allowed to weather to a nice gray. We'll probably put them away at the end of the season and store them in the bathhouse, and it should last for a really long time.
So I have a question about that. It said something, but I didn't know what it meant. That it was somehow when you install it, there's some, so it can't be stolen? I can't remember what they called it.
Yeah, these have vandal-proof attachments that are drilled into the cement slab, and they're vandal-proof because they can't be taken out with like a regular screwdriver. There's a special tool that
Okay,
unscrews
so they
them.
can be removed at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, once a year, you could take them out, but they're not, somebody's not going to get down there with a regular screwdriver and unscrew them.
Now, are these wooden benches?
They're made of teak. Yes.
Teak wood?
Teak wood.
So somebody could carve them with a knife or do stuff like that?
In theory, anybody can do, I take it back. There are cement benches that are going down in a different location, and I guess you could spray paint those. But because they are teak, they are sandable. If somebody really carves something terrible into them, you can, sand them a little bit. But keep in mind, we just finished installing 5 security cameras down there. So if you're going to carve your name in the bench, you're going to be on television doing it.
Disable the cameras first.
And we hope that we hope that it'll be a nice place. People will take care of it, and there'll be good security.
I only say that because I know what happened with the piano at Booger Marsh Field.
But it's totally different.
Well,
So are we okay with the sole source on, I don't know how many purveyors are fine. I mean,
Yeah, the
not
sole
that
source
many,
was
right?
for a
I mean,
reason.
There are not that many. This has been run through both the solicitor and the town administrator, and it's not just that they make this teak furniture, it's that they were able to provide specific things that we wanted the manufacturer to provide, not to do ourselves, like the connectors, so that we could have the serpentine bench and the brass vandal-proof feet, and the whole package. We didn't want to buy it from somebody else and have to drill our own holes and do all that stuff. But Peter and Jan can speak more to that, I think.
I don't dispute that we can do it, I just wanted to make sure on policy grounds we were.
I think the committee made sure that, there were a second and third set of eyes looking at this to make sure that it meets the general requirements for sole source acquisition, and I believe it does, and the solicitor agreed.
What else is remaining to be done on this project?
The gatehouse.
I asked what else is remaining to be done on this project.
Okay, I'm going to go really fast. So the security cameras are installed. There's one electrical outlet that's not working the right way that has to be replaced. The gates, the entry gates, and the gate at the end of the beach, I think got to the deep, did they come today, Rick?
He said they will be delivered on
Wednesday. We're going to get to DPW on Wednesday. From there, they're going over to Tony on Fish Road, where they're getting powder coated, and then they'll get installed. We have to get locks for the gates. Did I say the guardhouse has been ordered and that's going to probably come at some point in the next 2
You didn't
weeks?
say that, but yeah,
The guardhouse, the new guardhouse has been ordered. We are waiting for, the parking bumpers are there, but we have to wait until the parking lot is cleaned up by Rockio, and then we can install those. The site work at the shade sail structure has been the biggest problem, and that's really been weather dependent. Either it's been soaking wet and it's too wet to put heavy equipment on it, and if it's not wet, it's frozen. So we're really just hoping that we can get a few days to deliver the loam and get it spread and get the landscape edging in. And then after that, the rest of what will happen will be in the spring, which will really be the planting, and the concrete handicap access ramp. And then we're pretty much done.
And how much of this has already been paid for, like the guardhouse? I mean, no, I don't mean the money, I know if the money's available, but I mean actually expended, counted as expended. So the guardhouse, was that, did we expend the money and we're just waiting for it to arrive, or is that going to be?
The guardhouse, because it's a custom order, we have, I don't know that they've cashed it, but we did give them a check with, along with the contract, because it's a custom build thing, so you have to pay for it in full. And it's, don't quote me, it's not exact, but I want to say it's in the neighborhood of $5,400. So I don't believe that I don't know that they've cashed the check yet. I think the treasurer was just sending it out Monday or today or Friday or something, but.
Oh, she's saying she sent it out, so.
Yeah.
Someone just remind me, and I'm just kind of linking back to the playground, is this area also under the jurisdiction of the Recreation Commission? Or is that a separate?
I don't believe so. I think there's the beach committee really has been overseeing this, and obviously, you know, DPW has some role to play in making sure that, you know, the place is clean and safe and all of that. So I don't believe that the Recreation Commission has
The only
a
time the
direct role.
Recreation Commission
The beach is open.
is when the beach opens, Memorial Day to Labor Day, they supervise the parking lot.
This one was a council subcommittee.
So just to clarify, I guess it's a subcommittee, but it's not. I mean, it's made up of people, besides me being on the council. But we have been in regular contact with the Recreation Committee all through this design process to ask them for their input on, you know, what works, what do you want here, what do you want there. So we go to the Recreation Committee regularly to ask for their input. And this committee, the Grinnell's Beach Improvement Committee, will cease to exist once the beach project is complete and we have our official thank you ceremony for all the donors and the those who gave us grants. So that committee sunsets once it's all done. But that does bring up a point, which is Grinnell's Beach itself, the beach, is technically under the control of the Recreation Commission. The new Seaside Gas Station Park, because it never existed before, and the renovations to the abutment technically don't belong to anybody because they never were places that were assigned to any group to have responsibility or authority. So at some point, the council will need to decide who sort of has authority over those places. It probably makes sense to be recreation, but it will have to be done in some manner or form.
That's the part that's general DPW, general town jurisdiction.
I think long-term, the council may want to consider sort of a bifurcation of responsibilities, where the Recreation Commission does the programmatic work and DPW does the facilities management part.
As I'm pointing at Rick.
Any further comments, questions, concerns?
I know, I spoke with the treasurer today, so I know there's around $109,000 remaining that's expendable under the grant. What makes me a little uncomfortable here is there's other stuff that's more important than benches, concrete, all the gates, that kind of thing. And I would hate to spend money on benches and then get to the end and say, oh, we still need a handicap ramp.
Oh, no, that's all.
Our budget is, we are on budget. I have no doubt at this point that we will complete everything that was in the plan on budget. The good news is we're past the big surprises part of a project where, they start and you cross your fingers and hope that there's not going to be a big surprise. And luckily, we only had a few of them and they weren't too big. But we have no problem with our budget completing this particular project. But we do need to order this furniture. It's next up on the list. The gates that you mentioned, they're already paid for. They'll be here on Wednesday. The guardhouse check has gone out. There's no big item left that is risky at all.
Plus, don't you have people that would contribute if you did run into
I bet Tom can't hear you. I'm just guessing. But he only yells at Justin. I don't know.
Chronic problem with more than one person, Mr. Katz.
I think that it was just, there's also the possibility of additional contributors, although we don't hear "no doubt" on budget much in this room, so those are beautiful words. So
When I tell you there is no doubt that this project will finish, within our budget, there's no doubt we will finish within our budget.
I just want to say something too. Trish has taken the lead on this even before she was on the council, and then when she got onto the council, we kept her there. But she was responsible for all the grant money. She's responsible for all the private donations that are coming in, and she's like a floor lady down there every day, making sure that things get done and locking up things after hours. So Trish has really done an unbelievable job, and I'm sure if she's saying we're on budget, we're on budget.
I'm not doubting that. I know, having worked in construction, you get sinkholes. I know in town, some of our monthly reports start talking about leaks at the library. We hear from the schools where they had issues with leaks and stuff like that, and there are a lot of surprises even for something like this. And it just seems to me furniture should come after all that's in a totally agreement.
May I say some, or go ahead, Jan.
I think it's important to note that this project has been planned, designed, engineered, and approved by a grant agency, and it's being executed as such. So it's not as if, this is discretionary or just willy-nilly type of activity. It's something that has been vetted in a public process with a lot of involvement by people and with constant reporting to the council. So I think, when I hear that it's going to come in on the budget,
No doubt.
no doubt, and I agree with that. I can tell you from, experience that there has been a very tight management on this. I think we're lucky, to be honest with you, and I believe that there may well be an opportunity and a need to have a tiny little bit of money left for little things that always happen, when a project is complete.
And I'd like to say something. On behalf of the committee who's worked really hard on this, be honest, Justin, I'm feeling a little borderline insulted here because I've answered that question 3 times. We did understand, and that's part of the reason why we're not ordering furniture until now. We were well aware that based on the site that we were working with, and not just the gas station site, but even the beach, that the chance of some really unpleasant surprise was way up there. So, we were very careful about the budget to tackle everything that could have a big surprise in it first, to make sure that we could take care of all that infrastructure and get it done, which we did. And yes, did we have a few surprises? Yes, but we planned for them in the budget, and luckily none of them were too big. But I can tell you right now, a handicap access ramp is not going to have any big surprise. Putting the parking bumpers in is not going to have, any big surprise. We know how much the garden plants are going to cost, about $9,000. There's no big surprise that comes with planting. We can order this furniture and have it, and, we're just past that point. But we factored that in, and this committee's worked really, really hard as a bunch of volunteers. We came up with, $450,000 worth of grant money and private donations, and, which is a pretty remarkable accomplishment for a small group of volunteers to be able to do a project like this. And we project managed it ourselves, literally, our committee and Dave Stewart's here. And of course, we've had help from DPW, but we basically acted as our own general contractors. And frankly, I think we've done a pretty darn good job so far. So I really feel comfortable that we can order this furniture.
Sorry. With an exclamation point.
Is a motion.
I'm a little jittery about the sole source, but I there's no question you guys have done your homework, so. Okay, so we have money from a grant, and we're on budget.
And private donation money.
And Tricia has put her checkbook behind it as a personal guarantee. Can we go to a vote? Any objection to go to a vote? I think Justin raises a fair point. There have been some construction issues, but that's, for another. Any objection to go to a vote?
Nope.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve G5 as requested. All those in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions or recusals? Oh.
Voted.
That's cool.
I didn't get a vote from Nancy.
What was that about? Is that on the consent agenda? Can we roll it to the next meeting? Okay, I'm sorry. Don, just for those, Donna had a question about some leaks in another construction project, which I think is,
Well, that's not on
so
this
we'll,
agenda.
well, it's on a consent agenda, so we'll just put that to the next one.
We don't have any leaks, Bob, just so you know.
I didn't
There's
get a
no
vote
leaks.
from you, Nancy. Did you vote?
Yeah, there.
I
Did you
know.
vote for it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that was a 6-1 vote, do we agree?
I'm
Okay,
sorry, I
all
just
right.
didn't see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well,
Country View thing, or the?
No, this one.
thank you, everybody, for their work, and also thank you, everybody, for the diligence. There's nothing wrong with that. We've got one item left. Let's see if we can do it in 60 seconds or less. This is to approve the town council's 2019 meeting calendar. My understanding is this follows long-standing practice of the second and fourth Mondays, at 7 o'clock, right here at Town Hall.
I'll make a motion, we approve
Second.
2019 calendar.
Okay, there's a few workshops that are in there as well on those fifth Saturdays, and as we all now well know, we can assign special meetings. Any objections? Okay, all those in favor? I think we need a vote, because this has to be posted for open
Yep.
meetings, right? So it's 7-0, okay. I'd like to close that open and go to executive. Is there anything urgent that we need to add for discussion?
I would like to say a few things on the council's
Oh,
announcement.
these are like open, these are
You
open
have to have
forums
the
here
town
with no...
administrator.
Yeah.
Town
well,
administrator
they-
first, yep.
They've they're advertised similar to the open public forum, so strictly for informational purposes, no.
Okay, let's do
He
it.
has something information.
Bids and requests for proposals. Anybody?
that one.
No. Town administrator announcements? Nope, didn't hear any. Council announcements?
Yes, I have.
Just kidding. Did you have any?
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Councilman Perry's going to talk about the garbage bags.
That was
Otherwise,
one of
I
them.
will.
That was one of the items.
I
there.
object.
Okay. I want you to go first, Joe, and then we'll come back to you. All right,
Okay,
go ahead.
first of all, we'd like to waive the trash bag for the week of Christmas. People are allowed to put out 2 bags instead of the town bags. So I think that has to be,
Well, it's past practice. We've
yeah,
done it.
past practice, but I think that we,
Administrator have to just approve it.
so,
During the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Christmas,
You
yeah.
mean so we don't have to use,
So that'd be December 23rd to the 29th, I believe it is.
Good thing, we've scheduled a meeting for December 27th, so we'll be able to take that up
No.
timely.
Yeah, but they won't be doing it after.
Is it 28th? 27th.
So,
It sounds like
Be after the fact.
you're likely to get a ratifying
It'll be after
vote
the fact.
if you choose in your discretion to waive those.
He needs it.
Yeah.
so
I can't give you a vote tonight.
we'd like to allow that.
You can't
I
vote
can't
on
give
it.
you the
We
vote.
don't vote on it, because it's not on the agenda.
I just wanted to correct the dates.
Oh,
Recommendation.
okay, 26th to the
The
29th,
day after the Christmas.
26 through 30th?
30th, okay. 26th to 30th.
Yeah, because it's every trash pickup.
So there's no vote, but it sounds like there's likely to
And
be
then-
a...
And then I have some other comments or announcements? Okay. I'd like to congratulate the Tiverton High School 2018 Super Bowl champs, the Division III girls soccer champs, the Division III boys soccer champs, and the Division III field hockey champs, all from Tiverton High School. First, congratulations. Secondly, the tree lighting, Christmas tree lighting ceremony went well, and I'd like to take this time to thank everyone who donated food, Coastal Roasters, Seconic Grill, Brookdale, and Route 177 Flea Market, the crafts people, which were Cutie Curls, Tiverton Arts Council, and the Route 177 Flea Market. And the other people that provided services were Leo's Greenhouses, the Tiverton Fire Department, the Tiverton Police Department, Fort Barton School, Tiverton High School Marching Band, Tiverton Recreation Committee, Jonathan Perry, Recreation Coordinator, Tiverton DPW coordinating the lights on the tree outside, and of course Santa Claus for attending.
Did we have to pay him?
Yes.
Yes, we did. And third, I'd like to commend David Paul on organizing the funds for the people that were hurt in the school bus accident last week. His efforts raised money for 7 or 8 families that probably wouldn't have Christmas this year, but he went out there and started coordinating a program to get funds, and now all those families are going to be taken care of for Christmas. So I'd like to commend him for doing that. And that's it.
Very quickly, somewhere in the package, I think this was mentioned that on Friday, there will be a recognition of the town completing the comprehensive plan and responding in an exemplary way to the comments that the state had provided us. And for those who are interested, you are invited to attend. I think the planner had it in this report, if I'm not mistaken.
That's it. Any other councilor comments or announcements?
No, we'd have to ask the town clerk if she has anything.
Oh, yeah.
Nancy, okay.
Solicitor?
Because she'll get mad at you, Bob.
Okay. All right, there's no objection. I guess you want a motion to adjourn the open before we do roll calls? Or-
No, you don't
Just
adjourn the open.
Proceed right to the, okay.
Yeah. just
Okay.
roll call for the executive session.
Go to closed executive session.
We propose to go into closed executive session with 3 agenda items. There'll be a roll call vote after each. The first is sponsored by the town administrator for potential litigation. Under the authority of Rhode Island General Law, Title 42, Chapter 46, Section 5A2. Mr. Perry?
Second, yes.
Well,
Actually, do you want a
don't you-
motion?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I thought you-
moved. And then-
Second, yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
And the chair votes aye.
Notice was given, don't you?
And
Have
then-
a notice was given?
To remain there.
Okay.
Yes, we have notice was given on the town
Just
administrator.
the potential litigation, the notice was given to the personnel that was
Okay.
subject to
And
that.
there's been no request to remove it into open
Yes.
session? Okay, thank you. And then to remain, sponsored by the council president for collective bargaining with IBPO and IAFF. Also under section 42-46-5A2. May I have a motion, please? And a second?
Second.
Second,
Mr. Perry?
yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
And the chair votes aye. And then to further remain, as sponsored by the town solicitor for another litigation matter, the matter of Moore v. Tiverton, under the same section, 42-46-5A2. May I have a motion?
Yes.
And a second from Denise.
Yes.
Carrie. Counselor Hilton.
Yes.
Yes. Taking 5
And the
seconds.
chair votes aye. We will now take a 5-minute break and hit executive session. Thank you.